Okay, we got a long meeting. Okay, folks, it is 6:04. Welcome to our February Gualala Municipal Advisory Council meeting taking place on Zoom. So we've got a call to order. We read our resolution authorizing teleconference meetings at every meeting, or actually we're just voting on it, correct?
Correct.
We're not actually reading into it. So can we have a motion to approve that resolution authorizing that we continue with our teleconference meetings?
So moved.
So moved. Okay. Anybody second that?
I'll second that.
Okay. Sounded like
Murphy and
Don.
Hess.
Okay. Let's take a vote on that. Melissa?
I'm sorry, what was that?
That was the motion on the resolution authorizing continued teleconference meetings.
Aye.
Okay. Kevin?
Aye.
Don?
Aye.
Tom?
Aye.
Robert? Aye. Okay. Next order of business, introductions and announcements. Do we have, we're all present, all of the council members. Do we have any, except for our administrative secretary is absent at the moment, so maybe she'll still join us. But otherwise, do we have any?
And may I ask, there's a person here on iPhone. I don't have a name for you. Could you please identify yourself?
Announce who you might be. I see Lori has joined us, iPhone,
This is probably me, Matt Goins.
on
No,
iPhone.
Matt, I had you on here already.
Oh. Well, perfect.
One other person calling in on an iPhone, if you would identify yourself, please. And I also see Matthew's iPad. I'm going to assume that's our sheriff.
It is.
Looks like it.
Yeah, that's
Good
me.
to see you here, Sheriff.
Thank you.
Okay,
Yeah, Tom,
well,
sometimes you get a double on there. If somebody calls in on their iPhone, you'll get two windows on there.
Mhm.
okay, well, I'll just we'll see if that comes in. Oh, they left and they came back in, so maybe it's Mary. Let me just get that person in. Mary Mowbert.
Was it on the iPhone, huh? Okay.
Okay. No, I don't know. They're checking in now. We'll find out in a moment.
Okay.
But you can go ahead with the meeting, I think.
Let's continue then. Okay. So we are consent agenda. We have our minutes from January 6th. Everybody had a chance to review those meeting minutes, and do we have a motion to approve them or disapprove them or edit them further?
I will move to approve.
Move to approve. Tom, do we have a second?
I'll second.
Kevin will second that motion. Okay. So all in favor, Melissa,
Aye.
Kevin,
Aye.
Don,
Aye.
Tom,
Aye.
Robert, aye. Okay, so we've approved the minutes from January 6th. There was some last minute correspondence that Mary sent me an email about, so we can do a slight amending of the agenda. It was receipt of correspondence from Sonoma County announcing that they are continuing their meeting regarding revising the Sonoma County LCP, Local Coastal Plan. So that we can add as correspondence. There was also some correspondence on the county website with regards to a coastal development permit renewal, and that is 2022-0001 Forsman, F-O-R-S-M-A-N. That's on 30101 South Highway 1. Also up by one of the CDPs we're handling again tonight. So with those two slight edits to the agenda, we'll add those under correspondence. Anybody want to make an approval of tonight's agenda? Or a motion to approve tonight's agenda?
Also move.
So moved by Kevin. Can we have a second?
I'll second
Okay.
that.
Don seconds that. Okay. So we'll take a vote on approving tonight's agenda as amended. Melissa,
Aye.
Kevin? Kevin? Huh,
Aye.
okay. Don,
Aye.
Tom,
Aye.
and Robert? Aye. I'm wondering. I'm
I
wondering
have,
if-
Robert, just go on with the meeting. I received an email from Mary. She's on her way in.
Okay, and I just got a call from somebody that might be her, but that nevertheless, we'll continue here. We got lots to cover tonight. Okay, so public input on non-agenda items. Anybody want to comment on things that aren't on our agenda tonight? 684-1145. I'm not sure if that's Mary or not.
I told her to just go ahead and enter and enter silently.
Okay.
I'll see her.
So anybody have input on a non-agenda item? Otherwise, we'll go on to the law enforcement report. Hearing no public input on other non-agenda items. Who's with us tonight? I saw the sheriff. I saw JD. This is a persistent caller. Let me just mute myself for a moment, and then you guys go on with law.
No, Robert, I'm calling her now. Go ahead.
Oceanic Land Office, how may I help you? Hey, Tom, that is Mary, yes.
I know, I've already
Okay.
sent her the link.
Sent you the link. Mary, he has sent you the link, okay? We're continuing here. Okay, you're welcome, bye. So, sorry about that, Sheriff Kendall and others. We can go ahead with the law enforcement report.
All right, I'm going to ask JD to talk about the stats. I was going to have our OES coordinator, Brent Blazer, discuss the tsunami that occurred. And then when they finish up, I'll give you the overview of what we've got going on in the admin office.
Okay,
All right, good evening, everybody.
good evening, JD.
So I'm gonna give you stats for the month of January, and I also got some stats for you for the 2021 calendar year, which you might enjoy a little bit. So starting off for January of 2022, we've had 30 calls for service. And out of those, 6 investigative reports were taken. The high call type was 7 disturbances. We have 4 civil related issues, 4 instances of trespass, 2 thefts, 1 fraud, 1 coroner's case, and 1 mentally ill subject. And so moving to the annual side, for 2021, you guys might be surprised, but Gualala topped off for investigative reports taken for burglaries at 22. We actually had 32 calls for service come in to report burglaries. 22 of those were actual burglaries that we took investigative reports on. And that was the high number for the coast. Moving to theft, we took 4 investigative reports in total for the Gualala area. For vandalism, we took 2 reports. Assault, we took 5 reports. Domestic violence related crimes, we took 12. And then for mental illness, we took 1 report. We had, for other types of calls for service or self-initiated activities, we had a total of about 628 entries. We took an additional 54 investigative reports for other situations. And so that totals it out for reports on the Gualala area. We took 100 last year. And again, you know, the burglary thing kind of is surprising given what we encountered, you know, throughout the 2021 year in Albion and Elk. But yeah, you guys are top the list. And I would say with those, we had about an 80% to 85% solvability rate out of those reports that we took, with a couple people being taken into custody for those. Any questions? Any other statistics anybody might want to hear for call type or anything?
Hey, Bob, I have a question for JD.
Go ahead, Kevin.
JD, do you have any more information on that incident that happened at Old School with the, I guess the people that raided the house or up on Old Stage?
Schoolhouse.
Yeah, schoolhouse, yeah.
So what I can provide to you, I don't have too much information, but we submitted a complaint with the district attorney's office for the initial call for service that surrounded a battery, as well as an exhibiting of a weapon. There is another investigation that's surrounding that incident that is still under investigation, so I can't disclose much details about that, given the current state.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, Kevin.
All right, I'd like to, if we don't have any more questions for JD, I'd like to ask if it's all right with you folks, if we can have Brent Blazer discuss the tsunami and also a strange phenomenon right now. We're having fire weather in coastal regions. And I would invite, if it's all right with you folks, to have Brent discuss that shortly.
Please do, yes. Go ahead.
Hey, good evening, everybody. Brent Blazer, Mendocino County OES. Yeah, so we had this tsunami the other week, 2 weeks ago now, on a Saturday morning. I think I got a phone call at 3:48 a.m. Real quick, you have to reach out to National Weather and NOAA to kind of get the projection of what we're looking at or what the potential issue might be. And just so everybody is aware, initially, because it was a concussion type incident, not an earthquake, they weren't really sure what to expect. And so initial reports were maybe highly uncertain and a potential wave could reach our coastal at, say, 6:05. We ended up getting a better, basically we go into hourly type meetings. We got a better assessment and advisory. There's a difference, just so everybody's aware. Advisory is 3 foot and below, not significant, not generally a significant impact. A tsunami warning would be 3 feet and above. And that's an influx of surface water. So a lot of times a tsunami advisory isn't that big of an impact, just because high tides or king waves and things like that could be actually above what an advisory might be. So with that said, we just basically did the notifications and such, reaching out to city and harbors and such. Eventually, because of the advisory, we did a nixle. And just so everybody was aware, an advisory doesn't let the federally state or federal and state partners activate essentially the tsunami sirens via emergency alerts to your phone, and like the NOAA weather radio, which then also sets off sirens. So those triggers are actually mandated by the FCC and start at the federal level. We did do a nixle. I think that went out shortly before 7, because the follow-on reports then indicated that a tsunami impacts could reach as early as 7:30 at that point. So what I'd really love to get feedback on is anybody who got maybe mixed messaging. Sometimes you have residents that get messaging, say from Sonoma, because they have a different alerting authority versus what you got from us. if there's any confusion, anything we can do better, by all means, if you want to send me an email at oes@mendocinocounty.org. I'd love getting screenshots of cell phones and what it looks like and what kind of message you got, and try to make that as clear as possible moving forward. We are just happen to have a meeting with the state a week prior. We're looking at new modeling and how it impacts our coast and how we want to redo our response plan. And that's something that we'll continue to work on. And then, of course, March is tsunami month, and we'll have some exercise type of things that we'll be doing and reaching out for with our coastal partners then. Sheriff brought up some great points. We got another 2 weeks potentially of dry weather. With that, if you have dry weather, no rains and then winds, you potentially have fire weather conditions. Generally, we notify the public when we have a fire weather watch and or red flag warnings. But obviously, these aren't quite meeting the metrics, but the behavior is very similar with low humidity and things. So, we just want to stress that people really need to be careful. Keep their fingers crossed for some more rain and hopefully have a better drought season this year. If you guys have any questions, by all means, reach out. I'd really encourage people to look at the mendoready.org website. It has some preparedness information. We actually built a templated emergency response plan for your family, so you can kind of build a plan for at home. And then I'd like to just finish, pending any questions you may have. We're really trying to do some outreach for search and rescue volunteers and or ham radio volunteers. We're getting ready for fire season, so now is a great time to train people, meet new people. And so if you have anybody who's interested, please send me an email and we'll get them connected. I'll stop there, but if you guys have any questions, I'm here for whatever you might need.
Anybody have questions for Brent? Go ahead, Tom.
Brent, thanks for being here. Your information is very important to our community. There was a lot of chatter about the alert. I have a view of the ocean, and I was able to actually watch for some ripples. I think I saw some. But I just wanted to check in with you. You mentioned the possibility of a fire alert, and we just came out of January going into February. It is a dry year. We have no rain in the forecast for the foreseeable future. And I just wanted to check with you on how serious a threat that is in your view right now.
I'm not the weather, the fire, from the fire perspective, CAL FIRE and the local fire industry. I like to be optimistic. I don't think this is going to be the end of our rain season. I think we're just having a lull. We were projected from national weather to have a dry season. But I don't think we're entering summer by any month. So I'm hoping we have some more rain. I can ask for some spot reports if you guys would like, and maybe I can get something from our national weather partners to see what maybe a longer forecast looks like. They're not usually as confident with those forecasts. I did speak to them just the other day because I was scheduling we do a pre-fire season meeting with our response partners, just kind of a good opportunity to look at what the what the weather looks like for the next summer season, right? So we probably do that in March, April timeframe. And so we were actually discussing that date to kind of get us all online. And so, but I can ask for something earlier if you guys would like and share that.
Yeah, I think that'd be great. I know that there was a red flag alert for some parts of Northern California. I think that was mostly in the hills when we had those high winds a couple of weeks ago. And I think some people down here got spooked about that, but we have fire on our mind year round now, which is sad. And hopefully we will get some rain soon, but maybe for a future meeting, if you could drop by, or if somebody from the fire department wants to take on that task, we'd love to just kind of get some perspective on if there is a fire, what the risks are now versus what we usually face in September, October.
Yeah, I mean, certainly will. I will. One of the challenges I will say that Gualala might face is our weather projections come from National Weather Service Eureka versus Sonoma being they get their projection from National Weather Service out of the Monterey. And I've worked very closely with both offices. It makes it hard for our department to be able to put out messaging because I can only say what the weather agency's saying, right? I can't like modify. So sometimes Sonoma may have a wind advisory, whereas we're not getting it. I would do want to make sure everybody feels confident in the fact that every day fire agencies get a weather report at like 3 in the morning from National Weather, and during fire season they actually get it twice a day. So hopefully we have some good communication and such. But I will follow up with you.
Great, thanks very much.
Yeah, Brent, have you heard or have you already discussed anything about potentially curtailing the burning permits?
We haven't talked about anything like that. I can bring it up to some different offices and see what they want to do.
You know, as we get into the windy season, and if this keeps going like this, it's pretty scary out there when people are burning, and they might let a fire get away from them, you know?
Certainly. It does happen. So let me put that on my action item list, and I'll have to come back to you guys.
Thanks. Okay. Any other questions from council members or audience members of Brent Blazer? Okay, Brent, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Back to Matt.
Thank you, Robert. Well, I am at my house because I have been struck down by the Omicron virus. Luckily, the worst symptom that I seem to have is a positive test, and my wife has been working me into the dirt. I feel great, but I'm getting a lot done for a change. Let's just put it that way. So a couple of things. Of course, the Omicron virus is on everybody's mind. Every agency in California who, has peace officers, a jail, everybody's going through this. Luckily, we're kind of moving in a rolling wave right now where we'll have 3 or 4 people infected, 3 or 4 people come back. And so we're a little bit down on our numbers right now because we're just having 3 and 4 people out per week. And, then they're getting over it, coming back to work. Things are kind of making a good turn on that right now. One of the things that I wanted to bring up, right now we are seeing a massive increase in overdoses. For some reason, it has just spiked like you wouldn't believe in Mendocino County. And if you see someone who is in medical need, before you go to render aid, call 911, have someone coming. We had that young lady in the jail who she searched a prisoner and placed that prisoner's clothing in a bag, a paper bag. And when she pushed the clothing down, the bag itself became a bellows. And because there was some fentanyl powder on the clothing, it actually dosed her, and she spent the night in the hospital. And so please, if you see somebody go down, call 911 before you render any aid. If you get this stuff on you, you need to have an ambulance in or out. We've had a lot of saves with the Narcan that we've been administering for overdoses, but we're still fighting a losing battle with that. So please, if you see something like this go on, all of us, our first instinct is to render aid. Call 911 first. Make sure that you're protecting yourself so that you can continue to help others. Fraud and telephone scams are once again firing up. We're getting a lot of calls on those right now. Not so much on the coast, but throughout the rest of the county. It will make it to the coast when they get to your area code and your prefix. These fraudsters, they're in great big buildings in foreign countries, and they just sit there and literally make phone calls all day long. If you get a phone call from the IRS, if you get a phone call from some agency of authority, the first thing that you need to ask them is, sure, can you tell me what my name is? Because these folks don't actually know your name. We've had a lot of people defrauded over the last, I would say, 45 days in Mendocino County. So it's really turning up. Vehicle burglaries and vehicle thefts, they're starting to go back up again also. So please lock your cars. We just had one the other morning. A young lady just stole a car. Somebody had walked outside, started their car to let the defrosters run, as we often do in the winter. Well, I wonder who this is calling. Let's see here. My wife must have answered it. We've got those really cold mornings and people go out to defrost their car. They start them, they go back in the house to grab that last cup of coffee. And within 1 minute, the car was gone. So please think about those things. Just don't don't think that we will be immune to this over on the coast, because it will happen. Let me think what else. I don't have any other notes. Does anybody have any questions for me?
Sheriff, first I want to wish you well, and you and your staff, because I know there's been a lot of that going around everywhere, but especially at the jail. And we've been keeping track of that and thinking about you and your staff. I just wanted to add to what you said about online fraud. I was just approached online with a report from eBay that I just purchased a $279 watch. And of course, my first instinct is to click on that. My second instinct is to go, wait a minute, this is a fraud. It's called phishing, and that's what it was. When you look at the return address, it had nothing to do with eBay.
Yeah.
So, that's one way to spot them. The other way to do it is get off the email, go online, contact eBay directly, and tell them what you received, and they'll probably tell you, don't worry about it. And if it is fraud, they're pretty good, and PayPal is also very good about fixing problems. So you can get a hold of them and fix that. They don't want any fraud any more than you do, and they get rid of it quickly. But thanks for that reminder, and speedy recovery, my friend.
Thank you so much. Somebody put in the chat that they needed somebody's email. I don't know if they needed mine. I'll put my email address in the chat right now, though.
So anybody else have questions of law enforcement while they're still here?
Crickets.
No? Okay.
Want to go on, Robert?
So we will go on then. Okay.
Thank you. I have to step out, Robert. I've got another Zoom meeting.
Okay, Matt. Thanks.
Thanks
Good seeing you
so
guys. Thanks, JD. Bye.
Good evening. Good
See you next
weekend.
month. Okay.
Thank you.
All right. We just have a lot of audience members. I just thought maybe somebody was still wanting to come up with a question. Okay, we'll move on to council matters. We've been front and center for some time now with the Gualala Streetscape project. So matters are coming to a head again at this present time, and we wanted to present the latest right from the onset of our meeting, based upon viewers viewing our meeting and so on. So the GCAP committee met this past month again and put together a presentation, and Tom will lead that presentation again.
Thank you, Robert. I'm going to show a PowerPoint, and I'll give you a little briefing on it, but I'm going to ask everybody to, there'll be 3 parts of this discussion. I'm going to give some background, report on community comments that we solicited, share some new info, and go through all the design alternatives. It'll take about 10 to 15 minutes, I think. And then we'll have a community discussion and council discussion. And then we'll have possible action by the council. But for the first part of the presentation, for the PowerPoint, I'd ask everybody to remain mum. We do get a lot of views online for these things, and I'd like to just keep it to the slides for that part, and then keep the discussion separate so people can watch what they want to watch. So I'll go ahead and share my screen and start the presentation. This is the Gualala Streetscape update on February 3rd, 2022. Tonight, we're going to talk about alternatives, community response, and options. This project is going to define the look of downtown Gualala for the next half century. We consider it our most important planning matter. And tonight, I'm going to go through the background, some community comments, new information we received, and go through all the design alternatives that I know that are still on the table. Technically, all the alternatives are still on the table according to Caltrans, but when you get right down to it, we haven't talked about a lot of them in a long time. So then we'll have a discussion. The community will start that discussion, and the council will follow that. We'd like Melissa and Don to lead that council discussion at first, and then because Robert and I have already shared a lot of information. And then we'll have possible action by the council. So let's get started. Just a few key mile markers for the Streetscape project. I like to do this regularly because one of the most often questions I get is, why are we still talking about this? Didn't we decide this a long time ago? Is anything ever going to happen? As Robert said, this seems to be moving forward. This started in the late 1980s. The Gualala Area Coalition first identified the needs of downtown Gualala based on safety and aesthetic needs. So that's 30 plus years ago. We've known that there are safety issues and aesthetic needs for downtown Gualala, and things have not gotten better. In 1995, hundreds of residents and officials came to GMAC's help in drafting the down plan with Streetscape as a centerpiece at that. There's virtually an entire chapter on Streetscape. If you haven't read the town plan, it's inspiring. I suggest you find it on our website or just Google it, and it will tell you everything you want to know about the long-term goals of Streetscape. In 2002, we adopted the Gualala Town Plan, and Highway 1 was required by law to become a scenic element of the town. When I say by law, it's enshrined in county ordinances, it's in the state coastal plan, and that's what it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be a scenic element of the town. Think of the scenery around Gualala, and our town should remind you of that. In 2012, MCOG, the Mendocino Council of Governments, and Surf Market agreed on an interim constraint plan. I'm going to refer to that tonight. So you should know that it was designed to ensure that there'd be extra parking around the Surf Center in case the redevelopment project Mr. Bauer was considering then was not complete. MCOG agreed to that, but said it's not an ideal solution. In 2018, we had a Caltrans Town Hall #1 and found near unanimous support to eliminate on-highway parking per the legal requirements of the town plan and local coastal plan. In 2019, a year later, Caltrans released Alts 1 and 2 based on that output and based on the town plan. Again, this is 20 years after, more than 20 years after we identified this need and put it into the town plan. Both 1 and 2 were fully compliant with our town plan, and GMAC recommended alternative 2, which was kinder to the Surf Center and moved the highway off to the east a little. It was worse for the hotel, Gualala Hotel. But the Surf launched a petition asking for a new option, and Caltrans dropped Alt 1 and 2 without a town hall. They formed working groups with no clear outcome. And that led to Town Hall #2, which was the chaotic one at the Civic Community Center with no sound system, weak handouts, a rowdy crowd, and speakers were prevented from speaking. All three emerged from that town hall. It violated the town plan on many levels. Caltrans dropped all three because of engineering and design issues and because of a town protest over it. In 2020, Caltrans declared that downtown was too congested for on-highway parking. That meant no parking near the Surf Center. It released alternatives 4A and 4B with some interim parking, as they call it, uptown, either on the east side of the highway or the west. GMAC recommended Caltrans alternative 4A with the interim parking on the east. But we also said we'd go along with 4B if A didn't work out. Another petition group called Save Gualala also endorsed 4A. They had 1,650 signatures at that point. Caltrans circulated both 4A and 4B through online video. It conducted an extensive survey of the town, and it conducted Caltrans Town Hall #3. At number 3, Caltrans surveyed residents and found them very supportive of Alt 4. 3 out of 5 approved Alt 4, and the parking on the east side was preferred, Alt 4A. By the way, right after that, we recorded a GMAC meeting. That is our leading view getter of all time with 457 views. It's so popular that YouTube is now putting commercials on it. The surf market again protested the outcome of that, and Caltrans started working on something called 4C, with interim parking at the surf, truck parking, and a left turn lane at Ocean. Caltrans later dropped the ideas of truck parking at the community center and the left turn lane at Ocean. GMAC made recommendations on the draft of 4C to Caltrans and MCOG, and we encouraged them to go ahead with planning for parking, interim parking at the surf center. This is the 3rd or 4th time that GMAC supported that idea. In 2022, Caltrans finally showed a draft of the 4C ideas. They have not released this proposal with interim parking for the surf market. But when you look at the fine details, as Robert and I have done, that parking is actually at the Hotel Breakers, and it eliminates all the landscaping in downtown Gualala between the Hotel Breakers and the Gualala Hotel. Our committee has sought public comments on this. We discussed this extensively last month at the meeting. Talk about that in a second. And Robert and I went on the ICO, Facebook, and we met with Julia Aka-Krog and the Caltrans team to get more information. Caltrans is now amending draft 4C and tentatively planning another round of comments and possibly Caltrans Town Hall number 4, which would be the 4th in 4 years. So we said we sought community input after the Caltrans meeting, after our meeting at GMAC with Caltrans and MCOG last month. I think if you were to look back at that meeting, you'll see I started off very optimistic, and I think the entire council ended up not so optimistic by the end of it. And in January 14th, the ICO reported more chatter, little progress on Streetscape, which was disappointing. Not that they reported it, but that was an accurate report. The story said Caltrans appears to be at about the same stage of the project where it has been for the past 3 years. I agree with that assessment. Robert and I followed with a letter to the paper asking the community to state their opinions, 4A or 4C. We also reached out on Facebook and on YouTube. The YouTube being the meeting last month, where we had the addresses of where to write with your opinion on that. GMAC meeting videos on YouTube drew 120 plus viewers last month. Our community reaction will be reported is in, and tonight we're reporting the outcome of that effort. We found that comments supporting 4A over 4C passed by a 21-to-1 margin. There were a total of 44 comments received, 42 of them on that question. 42 of them were for Alt 4A, the one approved in a town hall last year by our town. 2 were in support of Alt 4C. There was a gentleman on Sea Ridge who said he and his wife supported that one. There was one other opinion, and I don't think she'll mind if I tell you that was Mary Sue Idner, for whom I have tremendous respect for the work she's done in this community. And she supported Alt 2, and I'll talk about Alt 2 in a minute. That's one of the ones that I said was fully compliant. We also received one other letter from Dave Spack, who's here today, who had a variety of suggestions. As I read it, and he can clarify this, it didn't seem to identify which alternative he proposed, but talked about how to fix the general project. We received 10 letters, and I included excerpts of those among the comments, 10 letters and emails supporting 4A. These are longer emails that were really more letter-like than an email-like. They were interesting. The owner of the Hotel Breakers, David Shariari, stated he had very strong opposition to 4C and called for a return to 4A. He cited curb appeal and ugly debates as his reasons for that. Just so you know, Mr. Shariari has been a long-term opponent of on-highway parking and was shocked to find out that Alt 4C would put that parking nowhere else in town but right in front of his business. If you've really been following Streetscape, you remember a few years ago there was a discussion about whether business owners should be able to opt out. He was one of the ones who wanted to opt out very strongly. He wasn't against putting interim parking at the surf, but this was his business. The Point Arena school superintendent came up last month about whether or not he'd be interested in having a bus stop on the highway. He is not. He wrote a letter. He said no prior contact from Caltrans about that. And he asked Caltrans to move forward with 4A and do away with 4C. He made other comments that are very interesting. By the way, all these comments and letters will be posted on the GMAC website. So people can go back and review them one by one, and they all will be shared. Every comment we receive will be shared with Caltrans and MCOG, among others. The Friends of the Gualala River, Fogger, well known in our organization in our town, board asked Caltrans to adopt and implement Alt 4A. They said 4C could be bad for the river and watershed. It was a really interesting letter. I hadn't thought about it, anything like that, but they're the experts. Save Gualala, the petition group that now has 1,690 signatures, said we are against Alt 4C. They asked Caltrans to adopt 4A out of respect for the clear wishes of the majority. The Cypress Village HOA board, this is the residential portion of Cypress Village. There's 15 residents there. They fully support alternative 4A. And they, of course, live right on the highway and deal with the noise of cars coming uphill and have complained about it many times. And two others wrote letters, one for Alt 2, that was Mary Sue. And I encourage you to read that letter. It's long, but it explains clearly that it's really the only alternative that supports our town plan without reservation. And then there, Mr. Spock reported there's ample parking in town and asked for other changes to the plan. Again, a very well thought out letter, very detailed. Robert and I met with Julia Ackerkrog about the risks of delays in the town plan and the LCP amendment process should an amendment be necessary. Our conclusions after meeting with her was that no means no. And this came after we asked for public comments. We just learned this after that. Julia says the town plan is absolutely clear. She said if there's one thing that's really clear in the town plan, it is that there should be no on-way parking. It is prohibited by law. Interim parking is still parking and is illegal. She said, that said, you could have a tightly focused amendment that could be done in 2 years. You may remember Frank Demling, former project manager, and I had some confusion about that at the last meeting. I said it could take up to 10 years. He said, we're confident it can be done in 2. The reality is a more complex proposal could take years. The county did manage to get through its additional dwelling unit amendment for the northern part of the county in just under 2 years. But that was an exception during a housing emergency. I'm not sure if there's other amendments that have been done in less than 2 years. The Coastal Commission, she said, is unpredictable, and it's possible they'll adhere strictly to the LCP, the local coastal plan, or make an amendment. They could add more restrictions. They could get into other issues, and that could cause delays. It did in the ADU case. She didn't think it would take 2 years to do that. In 4A versus 4C, either might require a local coast plan amendment, even 4A. However, there's a little subtlety with that. 4A supports the town plan long-term. It allows for transitional parking on the north end of town, while Caltrans determines the need for a turn lane on the north end of town. Eventually, we expect there to be a turn lane, but right now Caltrans isn't so sure. And so there would be parking there until then. But there is a commitment to progress in getting there. 4C actually goes against the town plan because it creates more pavement and it actually takes out landscaping, those are exactly opposite what the town plan suggests. By paving a fourth lane specifically for parking, it's a clear violation. 4A doesn't do that. And 4A doesn't take out landscaping, which 4C does. The town plan says downtown should reflect the nature around Gualala, should become a focus of that. And this would actually remove all the landscaping downtown, at least during the interim. And that brings us to the next point. The interim is not defined in 4C at this point. And Mr. Demling and the new project manager last month told us that they don't plan to put a specific length for the interim, either in 4A or 4C. Julia felt the Coastal Commission was certain to, I shouldn't say certain, but they're likely to insist on a specific length. And then she warned of amendment creep. Once an amendment is sought, private parties could try to expand it into other areas. And we feel, Robert and I feel this is very likely. Julia said she and the county would likely oppose that. But again, the commission is rather unpredictable in what it gets into. And that includes the commission. The commission could get into other areas. Litigation is possible. Private parties from either side could sue or take actions that cause years of delay. And this has happened before in many planning matters in our town. Our bottom line on 4C is this. A complex amendment for Alt 4C is far more likely to lead to process delays and lengthy lawsuits. And it would be much better to avoid an LCP amendment entirely for the sake of minimal transitional parking. We think that's possible. We think it's possible the Coastal Commission will see this as a work in progress and not as an exception to the town plan if we go with 4A. While 4C, again, goes directly against the town plan and would almost certainly require a complex amendment. We shared this information with the project team, which is moving forward with its process, but it hasn't given us a clear indication of what its next steps are. They did say that they're tweaking 4C. We don't know how. In May of last year, after Caltrans initially said it was thinking about a 4C and it had those elements in it, GMAC took a strong position on this. We said, okay, great. Interim parking at the Surf Center. We've voted for that before. We'll vote for that again. I'm paraphrasing here. But we set 9 conditions on it. We said that Caltrans would have to reverse its former finding and affirm that current congestion level can tolerate interim parking. It has not. We said they'd have to set an interim at 4 years from the time of the MCOG approval, but they're saying they can't set an interim at all. We said we'd require a 25-foot bed curb view clearance from all driveways, both north and south, to ensure safety. And there's been no commitment to that. They did talk about a 20-foot clearance for the southbound traffic. We said to position the bike lanes inside the parking lane to enhance safety and minimize restriping needs. And they said that was impossible. I'll go into that a little bit in detail, but they basically say there's not enough width. We suggested setting a parking time limit of 45 minutes for any interim on-way spaces. We thought that would encourage people to find spaces off the highway, which there are more than 600. They oppose that. We suggested allowing use of interim spaces by large trucks and vehicles. They haven't spoken to that. We suggested eliminating interim parking proposed in 4A and 4B on the north end of town if there's interim parking at the Surf, which is really why we had interim parking on the north end at all. And they have not been clear on that. They have not done that yet. And the plan they actually showed parking on the west side of the highway when the community said they prefer it on the east. We suggested they complete the negative declaration process without recirculation, but they say they're going to proceed with recirculating the plan in the community, which will spark more debates and could lead to another town hall. There is clear authority under the CEQA code, we believe, not to do that. They say that their internal staff said that they have to do it. Caltrans And we asked that Caltrans return the completed concept to MCOG as soon as possible. MCOG is supposed to visit the town next month to walk through the proposal. But here we have 7 out of 9 of our conditions. Caltrans says they can't or have not commented on yet. So let's go back to all 2. This is the plan. I included this slide because of Mary Sue Idner's letter. This is something that GMAC endorsed before. It's fully compliant with the town plan. It was released in June 2019. But interestingly, the project manager at the time, Mr. Damling, withdrew 1 and 2 without having a town hall and without circulating it very thoroughly in the town. So it had landscaping, a center turn lane, and no parallel parking on the highway. And this is rather fuzzy. These are Caltrans images. It shows you what it looks like. Here's the surf market where my cursor is on the left picture. And you can see there's no parking on the highway. But there is a bike lane. By the way, bike lanes will not be green when they go in. They'll be gray or they'll be road color. It's just here to illustrate it. There's also curb strips along both sides of the road. And there's a center turn lane that continues to the north end in the right picture. And you can see that here, and then it tapers off to have a formal left turn lane onto Ocean. And southbound, there's also a left turn lane up to RCMS, the fire department and all. This tends to be where we have a lot of accidents. This is where Cypress Village is. And it's because right now people just stop in the middle of a lane to turn, and cars come down that hill pretty fast. They rear end them. We've had 2 nasty accidents there in the past, and one of them left one of our residents with permanent brain damage. That was the one last year.
Those were 2 very good features of Alt 2, the left turn lanes at Ocean.
Indeed. Alt 3 was the one that came out of that noisy town hall. It had no landscaping at all anywhere in the project. It was wider than had been planned for over 25 years through negotiations with all parties in Gualala. It was 5 lanes for its entire length, including parking lanes on each side of the street. And at Ocean Avenue, it blew up to 76 feet, which would have required an enormous amount of fill to expand the highway to the right. It would have taken out trees at the corner of Ocean and the highway. It would have pushed way over on the left, on the west side. And basically, Mr. Demling, as project manager, reported to GMAC, council members will remember this meeting, that there would be high retaining walls, possibly with steel railings on top of them. He and the representative from MCOG thought that was too urban for Gualala. There was too much fill. He was very uncomfortable with that part of it. And there was enormous protest in the town about this. This is really when Save Gualala took off and launched a petition. So that entire concept was dropped. On a practical level, at least. Then came 4A, which took a step towards compliance with the LCP, the Local Coastal Plan. It was a compromise plan. It was supported by the community and by GMAC. It was similar to Alt 2, very similar, but it had transitional parking on the uptown on the east side. If you look at the right picture here, it stayed within a 60-foot width, which was the agreed upon width. And it would be compliant with the town plan after Caltrans eventually adds a turn lane here for Ocean. In the meantime, we're stuck with this dangerous intersection at Ocean. We would hope that that interim would be a short one, I think, Robert and I at least, and that eventually the town would adjust to realizing that 6 or 8 spaces on the upper east side of town, they don't use them now. And you can see that there's quite a bit of parking and other parking lots. I've shown slides before that show over 600 spaces in downtown. So 6 or 8 spaces really don't make a difference, especially in a part of town where people don't really park that much. The reason that I think GMAC favored this one is because if you look at where the parking is, on the north end of town, there's a lot more parking on the west side than there is on the east side. There are lots, though. There are lots for the insurance agency, for Village Cobblery. So it's really a marginal need up there. So in April 2021, after Caltrans announced it was looking at 4C, we looked at this. The initial Caltrans concept did not widen the pavement. It did not remove landscaping. It did not position the parking at the hotel breakers. And that's when GMAC approved it with 9 conditions. And Caltrans appears unable to meet at least 7 of those 9. This is what they showed to the Mendocino Council of Government. And you can see right here, it says community requested if parking can be considered in front of the surf market. Well, yeah, the community, the surf market was for that, I assume. We were for that. There's probably others in the community who think that's a good idea, despite the known safety hazard of people pulling out here. You could block off a line to increase line of sight. We could live with that until they built the interim, the turn lane in the center. But last year, they said, 2 years ago, they said they couldn't do that because it's too congested downtown.
And it was still the desired 60-foot width, the quaint, smaller feel.
Yes. And I'll note that, keep that in mind, that this fits, because one of the things that Robert and I and the council have suggested was using this one lane for parking in the interim, which was what the interim constraint plan was, and then building the turn lane later and just restriping the road. You don't have to do any major reconstruction. But this fit in alternative 2. This is a Caltrans photo. And now they're saying, no, you can't do that, it doesn't fit. So then in January, we saw the draft of 4C. It's non-compliant with the town plan. And we had approved this conceptually with the 9 conditions. It scraps all the planned landscaping in downtown. It has no defined interim. The community is strongly opposed to it. It's actually a 21-to-1 margin now. And it would allow for 4 spaces that are 70 yards from the nearest entrance to the surf at the present time. It's about 100 yards. The nearest space would be 100 yards from the future surf entrance. Supposedly after the surf rebuilds, this parking would go away anyway. But it would build a 4th paved lane in the historic downtown area, which Caltrans said, well, maybe someday you could pave that up or plant greenery on it. Well, even if you did, you'd basically be recovering the 4-foot hedge they're tearing out and putting in the 2-foot curb strip that's supposed to be there anyway. There would still be no greenery in front of the Gualala Hotel, probably the most historic building in town. There's also no turn lane on the north end of town. That's just the other end of it. And by the way, this is an image that I took from 4A, but Caltrans showed this to MCOG with parking on the west side. So this, then we suggested interim parking at surf, and this is what we had in mind. There'd be a sidewalk, a green strip, a bike lane. Then there'd be a parking lane. Then there'd be a driving lane and a driving lane. There'd be a buffer before the next bike lane. There'd be a green strip there. And then there'd be a curb hike going up to the Gualala Hotel with the sidewalk on the Gualala Hotel. This is 58 feet wide. You'll remember from a couple of slide shows ago, in all 2, they could fit 60 feet. Now they say they can't fit 58. There was also a complaint about the technical elements of here that I left out a buffer strip here that's required. But they also had not explored the possibility of merging this sidewalk with the one from the hotel and building steps down to the street level, which would mean a 2-level bike lanes on bikes on one level and pedestrians up above them on a sidewalk. We've asked them to take another look at that. Now here's the potential impacts of 4C. And this is a slide I've used before, but I've marked it up and made it a little bit more colorful for you. The yellow areas, this is the surf market. This is the hotel breakers. This is the Gualala Hotel, the pizza parlors over here. So this is the primary area that's impacted by 4C. there would be no greenery. It's much like it is now. There'd be no greenery there. And it'd be very wide. It'd be wider than the rest of the project. It wouldn't be 60 feet. I think it would be 64. The surf, ironically, where we had suggested putting parking, would have a green strip in front of it. The Hotel Breakers, which is very sensitive about curb appeal, would lose its 4 feet hedge, which shrouds the view of its parking lot. By the way, that's one of the requirements of the town plan too, to use the hedges to shield views of parking areas. Caltrans would actually take that out and enforce it. There'd be no curb strip here. There'd be no curb strip in front of the hotel, ever. Now, what are these to do? Well, here's the surf center. There's this large parking lot behind the surf center that's marked with a no trespassing sign. Okay, you can see people use this mostly for, I think, employee parking and deliveries. In past plans, and I know these are under review now, the surf center has been talking about taking out these buildings in the middle and relocating them on the north end of the property, perpendicular to the ocean. These buildings would go away, the video store and the old carpet store. In fact, the surf center last year had demolition permits out to tear these down. If they had done so, we would not be talking about 4 parking spaces on the highway and tearing out greenery tonight. This is a solvable problem. It's a private problem. It is not county policy nor state policy to build parking for private businesses. There is no requirement for that. And in fact, in this county, private businesses are required to provide certain parking of their own. We have some stores that are underparked now because they were grandfathered in. But if you do a major redevelopment, that's supposed to be solved. And the projects we've seen, the plans we've seen from the surf center are very promising in that regard. I know David's here tonight and perhaps he'll want to talk about it. Let me talk about some of these impacts. The first space from the current entrance of the surf, which is by this white tent, would be 130 to 210 feet out to the street, down the sidewalk, unload your cart. Are you going to bring that cart back? We'll see a picture of that in a minute. From the new surf entrance, which would be here in the one plan we saw, it would be 170 to 250 feet to the first space. The impact on the Hotel Breakers would be a loss of curb appeal and safety risks heightened for guests who already complain of turning out this driveway. You can see there's a motorhome marked right there. And it's very difficult, just as it is at surf, to turn out in front of that without seeing what's coming. Even with a 20-foot setback, the parking would block sightlines. The plan Caltrans submitted did not have a setback, but Mr. Demling said that there would be a 20-foot setback. The risk of shopping carts drifting into traffic would come up. I discussed that with the sheriff during the past month, and he had a kind of an amusing anecdote about a cart that had a bag in it. And the bag caught the wind, and the wind carried that cart right into the lane of traffic, like a sail. And it's not so funny, really, when you think about the risks. It would also increase congestion rather than reducing it. And one of the primary goals of the town plan is to reduce congestion in this area that Caltrans says is over congested. There'd be impacts on aesthetics. The town plan calls for more landscaping, not to take it out. This would remove existing and planned greenery. And if the interim ends, there'd still be no landscaping at the hotel. It would reopen a divisive town debate, which everybody thought was settled last year at the town hall. Well, most people. It would require changes in the town plan. I talked about how long that could take. And effectively, it would give private parties control over the project timing, because you can't enter interim until the surf center rebuilds its redevelopment project, which it's known about since 2002. So we're going on the 20th anniversary of that. They developed plans for it in the late 2007, 2009 era. And, but these buildings are still there. The no trespassing sign's still there. There's still, the surf market still says it's underparked and still wants parking. As far as I know, I have not spoken to the surf market in quite a while, but They did speak out at the MCOG meeting last year and singled me out in particular as being responsible for taking away their parking, which is not true, by the way. Social and legal impacts also would, those loom large in the local coastal plan amendment process. There are alternatives available. Businesses do have options to provide more parking, and GMAC's interim solution would provide more parking. That would be the putting the bike lane inside the parking lane and in a 58-foot width or even a 60-foot width, which we still know is possible from all two. In addition to taking out these buildings, there's also space behind the hotel and behind the pizza parlor itself. I've noticed quite a few cars parked there in the evening. There's a passageway from the pizza parlor back there. And there's also the parking next to Culpable Banker. Some of those are marked for CB and others are free to anybody. And of course, the Sunstrom lot is there. That's probably require parking sharing agreement. It's a private matter, but there's certainly options available for these businesses, which again, I've known about this plan for a long, long time now. Let's look at 4A versus 4C in the downtown area. 4A, landscaping with no on-way parking, or you could have in 4C, 4 interim spaces with no landscaping. Alt 4A would include the 4-foot hedge at the breakers that's there now, 2-foot landscaping on the east and 2-foot landscaping on the west for 8 feet. Alt 4C would use those 8 feet for the parking. There'd be no hedge at the hotel breakers. That would be taken out. You'd see basically pavement from the front of the hotel breakers all the way across to the highway and then all the way across the highway to the Gualala Hotel. That's a distance of probably 170 feet or so. And it would just provide those 4 spaces. This 5th one would be taken out. Here's some of the safety and congestion issues with 4C. I mentioned sight lines. That's actually my pickup. And I went down there and marked off 20 feet from about here back to my truck, and then walked out to the driveway where a car might be and said, what does it look like? Well, that's what it looks like. That's where you'd see a car coming towards you. And if you pull out in front of that car right now, you'd be causing a collision. This red car was on the Caltrans parking lot next door for quite a while last year. You may remember seeing it. And it was finally towed away, not by the state, not by the county, but by a couple of local folks who loaded it onto a flatbed and hauled it off to a dump in Ukiah. It's come to that. This is a Caltrans lot. They own it. They're maintain it. They left this thing there for a very long time. You can see the same Caltrans lot on a Saturday morning. It's completely taken over by the vendors. I love the vendors. I love people who make stuff. They need a place to sell their stuff. Perhaps the community center, perhaps another location. I'd love to see a permanent makers fair going on in Gualala. And then here's the issue that the sheriff and I talked about. Right after our meeting last month, I happened to walk down there and there, lo and behold, there's a shopping cart sitting on the edge of the highway. So you can't say it doesn't happen. Here's a quote from David Shahriari, the owner of the Hotel Breakers and View restaurant. My customers and employees often complain it is dangerous to pull onto the highway when cars and trucks are parked anywhere near my entrance. He wrote an eloquent letter, I think. Our committee's view of the best path forward is to drop 4C, at least for interim parking at the hotel breakers. We're no longer referring to it as service center parking. It's at the hotel breakers. That would be consistent with the outcome of the town hall and the survey. It's very clear and beyond dispute what the town wanted. There is very strong community pushback against 4C. The assumptions made during the past year were faulty, such as where they'd be putting this parking. And GMAC and the community did not ask for this. Removing the landscaping would go directly against the town plan requirements goals. It would have negative impact on the already struggling Gualala tourist industry. It would have the motives for those demanding the parking are suspect. Is there an abusive process here? Or do they really think that 4 interim spaces are going to change the tide of their businesses. There's potential litigation from either side that I mentioned earlier. And there's also the possibility of investigations of what went wrong in this process. Why are we having 4 town halls in 4 years? There's potential for years of delay at the Coastal Commission during the amendment process. I say potential. Frank Demley disagreed. He says he was confident they could get through in 2 years. I don't think Robert or I share that confidence.
No.
And there's a loss of control because private parties would effectively take control of this publicly funded streetscape project. We believe that it's better to fall back to alternative 4A. It's already been extensively circulated, explained, surveyed, and approved by the community. The community demands, through its comments, that Caltrans honor its will as expressed at the town hall. It will lead to a phased adoption of the town plan goals and might not require an amendment at all. We committed to Caltrans that we would go and suggest that to the Coastal Commission and the Planning Commission to support that. It will keep Streetscape on schedule. It will avoid further abusive process by any parties who want to derail the project entirely. GMAC and MCOG are very likely to affirm this plan, given the strong community support, and it will bring peace to Gualala and speed delivery of a safe and aesthetically pleasing streetscape. Let me pause here. What about all 2? Yeah, if we could get town to agree on that, but Caltrans doesn't seem to want to build it. They withdrew it without any hearing. They withdrew it based on a petition from one party that basically just asked for another alternative. Well, 4A is another alternative. It's a compromise plan, and it does lead to fulfilling the town plan. It may be hard to fall back to all 2 now, and that may spark a whole nother round of debate. And that's the only reason that I would not support that personally. At this point, I think the town has agreed to a compromise and we should move ahead with it. So here are our recommendations for tonight. And I promise this is my last slide. It's really the council's call to decide what to do. We didn't even try to write motions or draft motions on this. But we suggest that the Streetscape Committee write a letter to Caltrans and MCOG from GMAC in the name of GMAC with these key points. Based on community comments and additional research, GMAC recommends Caltrans and MCOG withdraw 4C. We say Caltrans proposed for all the reasons I've talked about. They promised interim parking at the Surf, but this shows it at the Hotel Breakers. The community is against it by a factor of 21 to 1. Plan would add congestion and safety risk while eliminating existing and planned landscape. Caltrans says it cannot specify the length of the interim, effectively relinquishing project timing to private parties. The plan would violate several parts of the LCP and town plan and require complex town plan LCP amendments that the Coastal Commission may not go along with anyway. It would create the very safety and aesthetic problems the town plan and local coastal plans seek to eliminate. It would require a complex amendment. I mentioned that. There's no need for a new bus stop for MTA or the schools. We have a great bus stop at the Sunstrom Mall for MTA. And the schools are kind of interested in doing an off-highway parking for schools. This would add further congestion to downtown, having a bus stop there. Think about a bus stopping, pulling into those spaces, and then pulling back onto traffic. Why do that in the most congested part of town? The 4 interim spaces provide negligible benefits in a town with 600 plus off-highway spaces. The spaces are too far from the market to be functional anyway. The hotel owner is strongly opposed on aesthetic and safety grounds. This is a man who, in his letter, says he's invested his life savings to this business and now feels it's threatened. The Surf Center and other properties have better options in hand to add more parking. It's likely to spark lawsuits from either side, delay needed safety improvements, and possibly spark investigations. Won't go into that more. That's very speculative. Our second major finding would be that GMAC recommends that without further delay, Caltrans and MCOG adopt 4A on strong support from the residents in the 21 town hall and survey, recent comments that we've collected, and very strong opposition to parking at the hotel breakers. The only the parking at the hotel breakers is now the only key element of 4C, by the way. The only other element was moving a sidewalk 10 feet down to the community center, which could go into 4A without any amendments.
And the truck parking was removed at the community center.
Yes, it was. GMAC has previously approved 4A in the belief it'll fulfill the town plan and LCP requirements. As soon as Caltrans determines there is a need for a turn lane on the north end of town. And they were close to that. In 4C, they had a turn lane for the southbound lanes, just not for the northbound lanes. The community was very supportive of 4A in the survey, 61%, and for parking on the east side, which I think beat out the west side by close to a 2-to-1 factor. It was basically nearly half for parking on the east side, about half that much for parking on the west side, and the remaining quarter of the sample was for no parking at all. The solution has already been circulated. It's been studied extensively in the survey. It's been discussed in detail at the town hall. We continue to recommend further circulation be waived under CEQA section 15073.5. And I haven't talked to Robert about this yet, but I'll tell the council, I'm thinking maybe we should approach and appeal that internal decision at Caltrans about the requirement to do more circulation of this plan this year. And if they don't do it, there are other ways to see if we can appeal that further. So that was my last slide. And now it's time for our community discussion. And Robert, if I'm not wrong, anybody from the community who wants to discuss this should go before the council, and then the council should discuss it and consider any possible action on this tonight.
Correct. And we still welcome comments also.
Yeah, we've ended the formal comment period. We said we do this
Okay.
before the next meeting.
Okay.
Of course, anybody in town can reach out to any council member at any time. We'd like them to go on the record, use their name, and tell us specifically where they are on this issue. We're always welcome. Our ears are always open. We do listen to the community. That's really our job. So is there anybody in the public who'd like to comment?
Yeah, I'd like to comment.
Is it
Go ahead.
Michael Baron Wilkie?
Wyke,
White, excuse me, I couldn't read your name there.
that's okay. I've been watching this for many years. I've been here 52 years. I've participated in the original workshops, and I'm a practicing architect in the area. And it looks like you've done a really excellent job in presenting the options that we've run into and come across, trying to answer the poor planning that was done by certain businesses and still accommodate, the plan to make Gualala more aesthetically pleasing as well as functional on traffic basis. So I agree. I endorse Plan 4A.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Anybody else in the public who'd like to comment? Mary Mobert, speaking as a private citizen.
Yes, sir. Totally.
And welcome to the meeting, Mary.
Thank you very much for sending me that. I could not get in, and I apologize for not being on time.
No problem.
As a public citizen and part of this community since 1976, I would really like to see absolutely and totally no parking, period. It is a hazard to anyone pulling out of any parking lot. It's a hazard to pedestrians and our children getting off of school buses. It looks terrible coming into town. We need the green landscaping and the sidewalks. We definitely need bike lanes for safety of bicyclists. They come from around the world to cycle down Highway 1. We need to give them as much safety as we do anyone who's driving a car. Get rid of the parking. I can say it a million times and still not say it enough. I really would like Gualala to represent Mendocino County to people who are coming in from the south and say goodbye to them and thank them for being here as people are going out and going south. And we need to be a really commodious, good-looking town to represent that. And I don't think parking and 65 feet of nothing but pavement will do that. So more greenery, more homey feeling, you know, we're isolated and we're a community. And so more community feeling would be a lot better than, okay, now we're in a suburb of San Francisco. And no parking, please, Caltrans.
Thank you, Mary.
Thank
Mary, how
you.
long have you lived in Gualala?
Since 1976.
Thank you.
You're
Any
welcome.
other members of the public that would like to comment tonight? Dave Spock.
Thank you, Tom. Tom and Robert, thanks for your fabulous work, detail assessment. I think it's very helpful for everyone to get the historic recap, and the way you've organized the information is it's helpful to all participants. In long-term transportation development projects, oftentimes alternatives analysis can help essentially us work through, you know, what we know is happening, what we would like to have happen, and incrementally kind of come to terms with constraints as well as harness opportunities. And sometimes what happens, it takes so long to get through that process, subsequent stages in the analysis kind of tie us up. We lose track of the earlier analyses and some of the lessons learned later on, and can't find our way back to what might have been good ideas and perhaps even best ideas at the beginning of the process. This is a process that's been dominated by a lot of discourse, a lot of controversy, a lot of perhaps antagonistic exchange that has pushed the alternatives in a direction that, from my opinion, has lost track of its original functionality and original objectives. Alternative 2, in many respects, most closely resembles the input that I've most recently provided, and I'm glad to hear that Tom and Robert, you guys will be sharing that with others who have an interest locally. Bottom line is not to overcomplicate the highway. Bottom line, to Mary's point, let's make it attractive. Let's make it work for all the modes that have a right to operate in it. And under the Caltrans new director's policy, that means a complete street. That means a street that's not only accessible and attractive to all modes, it's safe to for all modes. It's also intended to make a place that in a case like Gualala, where the highway really is not just the front door, it's the living room. Caltrans has an obligation to implement a design that complements that urban purpose, that community building purpose. Having parking in this right of way doesn't meet that need. In fact, it ties our hands further. It takes area away within that right of way, which is expensive, and puts pavement on it instead of landscaping, and instead of a continuous center turn lane, which operationally, we all know that a center turn lane, the whole length of town, all the way up to Ocean and even above Ocean, would be extremely helpful in avoiding collisions such as those that we're all aware of most recently. So let's go back to basics. Alternative 2 functionally is probably the superior alternative on the table, even though it's a while back, even though there's been a lot of conversation and investment in 4C as what appears to be the most acceptable compromise at this stage. Don't get tied up. Keep an open mind. Caltrans is still considering all the alternatives, and it may be that they go back to what was an earlier rendition that's simpler, less expensive, less complicated, and less dependent upon deals getting cut that are going to represent compromises, both from a policy standpoint and ultimately in a community building standpoint. Thanks for taking my comments, and thanks again for the excellent work you're doing representing us.
Dave, there's some people here who probably don't know your background. Could you just take 10 seconds and explain what your career path has been?
I've worked for the past 35 years in various planning capacities. Over the last 25 of those years, really focusing more and more on infrastructure, transport, water conveyance, water supply, airports, railroads. My last work over the past, I don't know, maybe 15 years is focused in on flood control infrastructure, large scale community building, parks and recreation work, high-speed rail. So anyway, I have come to this exercise with a bit of background in both transportation planning and environmental planning. And
I'd
as
say
a local
so.
resident, I've been watching this continuing kind of grinding mess in our village, thinking this didn't need to happen. But again, we got to hang on. We're almost there. Just stay with it. Don't give up at this point. We'll get there.
Yeah, I hope it doesn't sound like we're giving up.
No. I know that you're not. I just want to encourage everyone to keep focused. Now's the time. You know, this is oftentimes a war of attrition, and now is a crucial time to stay attentive, be commenting, and keep an eye on it.
Thank you for sharing your expertise. Really appreciate that, Dave. And it's great to have somebody with your background and Mr. White's background to share their views with us.
Happy to help.
Are there any other members of the public who'd like to comment?
I'll go ahead and say a little bit. Dave Power here.
Go ahead, David.
So John asked me to comment here, and I'll make that brief. He is always about parking on the street. He's made that well known. He is just looking out for the interest of Surf Market. While, you know, our property is constrained on basically all four sides, so he is fighting to keep what he can available to Surf while we're working on a solution. And while we're working on this solution, obviously we're still in the planning phases here. It's not built yet, and this makes everybody with a significant interest in that property very nervous. So it's not something he takes lightly. It'll also be very expensive, and you know, it just to have things cut and removed, and then also to look forward to having a very big bill that you pay for the next 30 years is not. Obviously, he's trying to protect his and our tenants' interests there. So. That being said, my own personal comments are, and pretty much have been, you know, push east as far as you can. There are a lot of sidewalks there that Caltrans has repeatedly said they have not gone into the final alignment phase. They're just showing images on the ground. So when they get to the final alignment phase, they will actually align it to where they're going to put it. But you know, they got sidewalks all up and down the east side there at the Gualala Hotel, at the old post office, and the 76 and Chevron there. So, you know, I mean, I don't know if those are at the end of the line there, or if it could get pushed a little further east. You know, it just, my takeaway is the West can't move further west, but the East can go east because the West has got an ocean there, or a river. I do agree with comments. We do need that turn lane at Ocean. I've seen several accidents there, and it's not pretty. So that I am all for. As a side note, the Alt 2 issue, I'm not Caltrans, and I can't surmise I can only surmise why it was changed. There was a significant issue there with the Old Bones / Mexican restaurant / whatever it is now. They were fighting, I think, the same reason Surf was fighting. Basically, if Streetscape went through as you know, again, as was on paper, that was like 65% of their parking was going to disappear, and they'd have like 3 spots. So, you know, for a restaurant to operate on 3 spots, that would effectively make Caltrans probably have to buy the restaurant. You know, I don't know what you would do, because it would be an extreme taking on that end. But again, I can only guess at this point. I did want to address Tom's comment on the demo permit. It was not issued last year. It was actually issued 2008 or 2010, somewhere in there. Contamination issues from the 76 station caused delays until basically the pandemic, which then slowed things down. So that's where that stands. Also, he mentioned something about, the parking shouldn't be provided for by a county or state, which I agree with, unless it's the county or state that's removing them. So, take that for what you will. If you come through and if the county or state comes through and rips up half your house, you fully expect them to put half your house back. Don't leave whoever you're coming in through and damaging them, don't leave them damaged. You got to make them whole. It's just kind of pretty simple California thought there. Not to mention, I think Tom even mentioned this, is just the parking lot's already small. So you're making a non-compliant parking lot even worse before it has been, again, this is without our project, as we're developing it in place, you're taking a non-conforming, underserved parking lot and you're chopping half of it away. So, again, it kind of goes the same hand in hand with the restaurant. Let's see. I think that's about it. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, David. We really appreciate your comments on this. And I'm not challenging them, but I wanted to point out the pollution issue you referred to was something that the BLP litigated against the other gas station, I believe. And it ended in August 2019. So since August 2019, there has been an opportunity to tear down those buildings and end this problem. The parking, the county was never obliged to provide parking on the highway. The taking issue, this council has repeatedly done all it can to move the highway as far east. And as recently as Monday, when Robert and I met with Caltrans, I asked them why they had not explored an option that Frank had raised in 2019, which was to merge the two sidewalks on the east side. Why should Caltrans add a 6-foot sidewalk when the hotel already has a 5-foot sidewalk for a total of 11 feet, and then say there's not enough width? So I asked them to take another look at that. Hopefully they will. I don't believe it will be taking more land on the east side of the highway. Nor do I believe that you have a complete limit on the west side. I think there's some room for both sides to cooperate. But as we saw in all two, it was possible to do this with a 60-foot length. If we voted to take all two over alt one because it did shift the project to the east, away from the surf. We basically act on what Caltrans has given us and make recommendations on that like we would for anybody building a house in the county. So it's never been a personal thing, and it's we're always happy to hear. And when and due respect to your family, last year's MCOG meeting, your dad was at MCOG saying that GMAC is trying to take 5 spaces away from them. No, GMAC is not. GMAC has repeatedly voted to do interim parking. And on Monday morning, we met with Caltrans. We again asked them if they could do interim parking to make a plan where that happens. We presented our plan and they shot it down. We asked about the sidewalks and they said because they're on 2 levels, they can't do that. I think I showed in my presentation, I said, can you work with the hotel, the new owner? Expand it to 6 feet, the legal requirement, build them a new sidewalk and put steps down to the bike lane to the street. So hopefully they're looking at that. I would like to see, I do consider 4A a compromise plan, and I would like to see the town get what it needs sooner rather than later. And we've come up with a lot of ideas here and making that happen. I'd love to see BLP join in this compromise and work with the majority of the town that wants to see this thing completed and come up with something that we can all live with. Thank you.
Thanks, Tom. Anybody else from the audience before we continue with council members? Hearing none. Would Melissa, Dawn, Kevin, even myself like to speak a little bit here on this matter?
Mine's short.
Can we guess?
My comment would be short.
Okay, go ahead, Melissa.
4A, I think they should go back to 4A. My preference would be to go clear back to 2. But if they don't want to go clear back to 2, I'm glad to hear such a someone with such lengthy professional credentials spoke up for 2, because 2 is the simplest and it is most adherent to the town plan. And if not that, 4A. But stop messing around with us and stop with the bullshit. Just state 4A is going to do it. State 2 is going to do it, and just go with it. Stop messing with us. I'm sick of it. I feel like I'm never going to see this thing. I'm going to be dead before it's built. I can't walk downtown. It's not safe. I don't want to spend the rest of my life in a town that I can't even walk downtown. I'm tired of it. That's it.
Thanks, Melissa.
Thanks, Melissa.
Any other council members?
Outside of one person completely shanghaiing the whole thing and killing it. I'm going to hang up. I'm just going to get angrier.
Melissa, don't hang up. We want
You're
to
not
know,
yet.
we may have some action on this tonight.
Kevin, Dawn, before I start?
I think she hung up.
Okay.
Yeah, okay.
Can I chime in for a second and make a comment?
Who is that?
This is Robert Bowen, owner of Upper Crust Pizza.
And what are you on the iPhone?
I am.
Uh-huh.
I wasn't really going to say much. I just wanted to listen and see how everybody was thinking. But, you guys know that I oppose this plan. I mean, the Upper Crust Pizza, it's my livelihood. And a lot of people don't know this, but, I purchased the building about 6 months ago. So not only am I the owner of the business, but I'm owner of the building as well. So basically you're trying to take away my parking from my business. And what a lot of you guys don't understand is that on a Friday and Saturday night, I'm doing between 100 and 140 pizzas. That's about 70 to 80 cars that are pulling up in front of my building in about a 4-hour period. So my plan with Frank is that next weekend, I'm going to set up a time-lapse camera and we're going to count the cars that pull up to my area. And then we're just going to kind of go from there and see how, things go. So I noticed that they've definitely have different planning designs, but, this is my livelihood and I'm the center part of this town and I have fed everybody through this pandemic and, I have to fight to keep what's mine and I need parking in front of my building. And I'm just going to leave it at that. And the next time you guys meet, I'll have a car count for what pulls up and we'll just go from there. That's all I have to say. Good night.
Thank you, Robert. We don't hear much from you. I remember you speaking at the town hall and I appreciated your comments then. You have been in our thoughts this entire time. We do discuss that all the time. But thank you for your comments. We really appreciate that.
Yeah, I'll take those 4 spots that the Breakers doesn't want. I'll gladly take them.
Well, the one thing I would point out is David's asking us to push the highway, push it to the east, and you're asking us to push it to the west. So that's
yeah, like I said,
not us.
I'm happy.
Caltrans.
Right, and I'm happy to take 4 or 5 spots parallel or not. Because honestly, what's going to happen, and I have delivery trucks too. And Frank's already made it clear to me that the delivery trucks have the right of way. They can stop right in front of my building and unload right there. So they'd have to go around and they're going to drive in your middle lane. Well, I promise you that on the Friday and Saturday nights, my customers are going to do the exact same thing. And the people are going to go drive around. And I just know it's going to happen. So I'm just warning you that that's going to be a danger there as well. And another thing, you have topical maps, but the bottom of the highway right now sits about 5 feet below my entrance to my concrete landing. So I don't know how they plan on leveling it or stepping it up, or but the proposal is just a topical, and it's not on a level just to show that, I don't know how you would call it, the elevation change.
Yeah, that's accurate, and that's something I referred to in the presentation at the hotel as well. And I've asked Caltrans to figure that out and get back to us. So we'll see. We'll share that information publicly. And yeah, please share your information with us about your traffic study.
Yep, and like I said, I'll come back next month and I'll give you a head count or a car count on an average weekend. And like I said,
you don't even have to wait till then. Call us anytime.
No, like I said, I'll have the proof, and we're gonna do time-lapse cameras for Friday, Saturday, Sunday for the President's Week.
Thank you.
Could I have Robert's last name, please, for the record?
Bowen, Bowen.
Thank you, sir.
Anybody else?
Can I just say something really quick? I did say pushed east, but that was in front of the surf market and the pharmacy, old pharmacy lots. Not necessarily in front of the Upper Crust Pizzeria, because that is also one of the many places, one of the 4 or 5 places in town that John has always contended will suffer the most from the town plan removing parking on the street. So how it goes in there, Caltrans said if the highway jogs and snakes, that serves only to slow traffic down, which is a good thing. So I just wanted to add that.
Thank you, David.
Kevin, Don, do you have any comments?
Yeah, well, tonight's presentation, of course, has been extremely detailed. A lot of historical information and status of the various proposals. Appreciated hearing that again. Also appreciated hearing from some of the members of the public about their feelings and their take on the current status. I don't have a whole lot to add other than I do feel that Plan 4A is probably the best approach. We've pretty much approved that in the past. It does provide some temporary parking, but that temporary parking doesn't create a 4th lane. In the place where there will be temporary parking, there's no center turn lane, if I'm not mistaken. So in the future, that temporary parking can be removed, and then we can have the center turn lane, which I do think is important safety purposes throughout the downtown area. And I'm really very strongly opposed to these 4 parking places. I guess this is part of 4C that would be in front of the breakers. I think that's a pretty bad idea, and I'm not sure what good it really serves, quite frankly. So I'm hoping that Caltrans really just goes back to 4A, maybe with a few little tweaks, but we need to move forward on this. I know Frank Demling, I think, said that nothing can start until 2025 at the earliest in any event, so there is time But as Dave mentioned, we need to keep on top of this and make absolutely clear, what the feelings are of not only GMAC, but also a majority of the community. So myself, I'm in favor of sticking with 4A and moving forward.
Thank you, Don.
Robert, did you want to say something?
I do have something to say. I hope it's not too long. Just thought we'd hear from Kevin maybe first, if Kevin has anything to say.
Sure.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. Thank you, Robert.
Okay.
First off, Tom, thank you for an excellent presentation. You really kind of helped clear up a lot of the misconceptions in the community. So I appreciate your presentation tonight.
Thank you.
I have a few concerns. One is we have never heard a clear clarification of what interim parking is. And I would suspect that once it's paved parking, whether we call it interim or not, it will become permanent parking. And we really don't have the enforcement to not make that happen when it goes away. So we've never heard what the definition of interim parking is. So I have a hard time approving 4 interim spots that we have no idea what their future is. I would agree with Robert from Upper Crust, and I also look back on the hotel as well. I believe that's part of the old time history of our community in not parallel parking, but pulling in parking in front of both the pizza, Upper Crust Pizza and the hotel. And I think I've been a user of those parking spaces for many years. And I think people are accustomed and comfortable with the inline parking, but I don't know if I would support parallel parking in front of their operation. So I think there's something we should look at to provide parking for both those establishments. I really disagree with any idea at all of putting in interim parking in front of the breakers. I think that to me is a non-starter, because I think it impacts one business considerably for a temporary assistance to another. And I'm not in favor of any temporary fixes. I would like permanent fixes. I know that there's some interest in the community to provide parking for people with trailers and boats and large vehicles. Well, maybe on a temporary basis, we can work with a hotel and see if there can be some pass-through parking behind the hotel temporarily. And then maybe John Bauer and Steve May can come up with a great plan to, when they do their parking plan for the surf market, is incorporate large vehicle parking within their plan, so we don't have to utilize our streets for that. I'm in favor of 4A, and I definitely believe in it because the public believes in it. I mean, there's overwhelming support with the 4A plan, and there's only 2 people that really voiced any support for 4C. So I would, that's how I would be leaning, and I really think it's time we listen to the public and move forward.
Thank you, Kevin.
So
go ahead.
I'm gonna probably ramble on myself a little bit, but I did want to, or I will ramble on. You guys are also articulate and eloquent with your speeches, but I want to thank all the audience members, first of all, for staying patient with us on what is very important to us at this point in time in the whole chronology of the Streetscape project. This goes way back to prior to the Gualala town plan even going into effect in 2002. This predates some of the conversations we've been hearing tonight from some of our newer generation folks. This predates John Bauer. This happened back when John Bauer Sr. was still alive, some of these things as we were planning the town plan. The hodgepodge was what I remember people always saying. There's many of these people that are no longer alive, but the hodgepodge going through Gualala that existed. We were trying to come up with a scenic element of this beautiful river town as you entered from the south. There was the 80-foot right-of-way that was talked about, which was impossible to begin with, but that was what made the Gualala town plan even pass with the Coastal Commission. I think that as you go through these many iterations of the streetscape project over the years, you learn so many things. The 40-foot corridor preservation setback. You learn about what that was meant to be and why the 80-foot right-of-way was talked about from the get-go. But narrowing it down to the 60-foot is what everybody seemed to really want, to keep it a nice, small, quaint town. The no on-street parking was a great concept in the town plan. The Gualala area has that benefit of having so many off-street parking spaces, unlike areas like Point Arena or that have to pretty much park on street. We don't have to. We can get off of our highway, off of our main corridor, off of our main street here in this beautiful little town. There's so many things that benefit us all. We're getting to the point where we don't want to lose this project. We've evolved to the 4A. What it did 4A is it took away some of these pedestrian median or pedestrian refuge islands that we had in the original plan, or one of the most welcomed plans, which was Alt 2. It took away the whole length of the downtown handicapped stretch, or from Ocean Drive to Center Street being a continuous center left turn lane, although we will need it at some point. But we've got to do what we can to keep this project going. It reminds me of past infrastructure projects that I've dealt with over my career here in Gualala, and it comes down to the bitter end where we almost lost the undergrounding project because we couldn't get everybody on board. We have almost everybody on board on this project at present, and it comes down to some inherent parking issues that a couple of property owners have that can be worked around. We can change our behavioral patterns a little bit in this community. What's the benefit of this whole project is that it's going to be a complete street. It's going to provide modes of transportation for those that walk, for those that bicycle, for those that use their cars. They just have to get off the highway and park in these many opportunities that they have to park. I feel sorry for, or I feel sympathy for somebody like Bob, like Robert at the Upper Crust Pizzeria. We want to preserve our historic part of this town as much as possible. And that's why the whole parking lot at the back of the Gualala Hotel occurred. That many people park there that use this entire town. They park there, they walk everywhere. They walk to the pizzeria. They park around the corner by the Coldwell Banker to get their pizza. There are ways that we can deal with all this. The more parking that is created at the one property in town that has a deficiency, a known deficiency, the Surf Market, it's a 10,000 square foot building that has not enough parking from the get-go. If we can somehow solve that, we're all the much better off for it. The whole community, the whole region. One thing I've noticed since those buildings became vacant, I'm talking about the latest use at the old pharmacy, which was the cottage carpet, and the latest use that was at the old gas station on the west side, the video store, is that it's helped with the Surf's parking needs on that side because you don't have those other uses occurring. Back when the post office relocated from where Red Stella is now to the wonderful location the post office is now back at this present time, that helped with circulation. what we have to plan for in this future and our future generations, what they were trying to plan for is at peak times, we need to be able to deal with traffic. And that's what Caltrans is helping us with. We also have to think of how we can get traffic through this community at those peak periods of tourism, of whatever. So I think the closest we're going to get at this point, after all these years, is 4C. I say 4C, I say 4A, which gives us the best avenue to fulfill the town plan down the road. The parking at the east side of the north end of town can easily be changed into a left turn lane. And I'd really like to see the left turn lane that comes from the upper part of town to the RCMS also at some point, hopefully realized, okay? So I'm sorry, I am rambling on a little bit, but there's so many things that have just built up over these years. And I really respect some of the older opinions that we heard from Michael Wyke, from Mary Mober tonight too. So we need to stick together as a community and move on as both Tom and David have so eloquently and articulately stated. And hopefully we can all agree on a 4A, which will bring us to the ultimate resolution of no parking on Highway 1. Thanks for your patience.
Thank you, Robert. And when I make a presentation, I'm speaking, we have no staff at GMAC. So basically our committee leaders, they make a presentation like Kevin will on a project tonight. And then we speak as council people. That's why Robert's speaking now. And I just want to add a few things. I don't really have a lot more to add, but I want to thank everybody who's participated. I want to thank all the people in the community who did step up and comment. Even though it just takes a few minutes to write an email, I know that everybody's busy. And we got an enormous response for a couple of weeks. We reached out as much as we could and got a good feedback on this. We seemed to have an opinion last month, but we wanted to hear from the community, and we did. So thank you, everybody. And the people who came here tonight on a Thursday night, I know you have other things to do. Robert, I know you're in the middle of selling pizza, so especially appreciate your presence here tonight. I want to emphasize that we are not, GMAC is not the planning agency here. Caltrans has been chartered by the county to build this. It's their highway, and the county looks to Caltrans to come up with a design. If we could design it, it probably would have been designed 30 years ago. It was designed 30 years ago in the town plan. So I agree with all the comments I've heard here tonight. I appreciate everybody's concern. I hope, just as we're looking with Caltrans to explore some other options, that Dave Bauer, Robert Bowen, and others will explore other options. David, what's up with the stores? Maybe you guys can move forward on that. Robert, I'd love to talk to you more about your options and see what your situation is. And I don't know if you know, but there's a new project manager on this, Tariq Chechi, who's coming up to speed on this. Frank's a consultant now, and because of his familiarity, you may be meeting with him. But we're kind of dealing with Tariq at this point. Anyway, where we need to go now is I'd like the council to consider giving its support to letting us write this letter to Caltrans on behalf of the council, expressing your views along the lines that I outlined on the slide. And if you'd like, I put that slide back up. And then I'd like to hear a motion if you're willing to do that. And we'll go ahead and draft that letter and continue our dialogue with Caltrans.
I think it'd be a good idea to put that slide back up, Tom.
Sure. Give me a second. Gotta find the slide.
Can I make
first.
one more comment?
Go ahead, Robert.
I appreciate your sympathy, but your sympathy doesn't pay for my mortgages that I have to pay for. And I've made improvements. I built that little breezeway to the back of the hotel. But see, the thing, and in the 20 years or so that I've been involved, I've seen 4 different owners of the Gualala Hotel. And it's my understanding that that parking lot has a, Chucky at the surf, she has so many spaces. But if the new owner or current owner of the hotel wanted to close that off, it's totally private, and he could make it, inaccessible for the public if he wanted to. So, I've only met the new owner briefly. It's my understanding that, he's not interested in opening it. Maybe he wants to flip it. And the way things are right now, there's no way he's going to find 40 people to work to operate it. So I just want you to be aware that, the owner of the hotel, he could shut that down. And then all those spaces belong to him. And
Hey, Robert,
that's all I have to say.
Robert, just to clarify.
Yeah.
Can you see the slide here?
Yeah.
Is this blue area what you're talking about here? Is this owned by the hotel?
I don't see the slide.
It is owned by the hotel, Tom, I know that.
Oh, okay. Including the Coldwell Banker parking?
Not the Coldwell Banker parking. no.
Coldwell Banker is on the outside is part of Coldwell Banker. The
Right.
inside, that's why it's kind of barricaded off with a log right there. And I believe Chucky's allotted so many spots for her store, but the rest belongs to the hotel. And if he wanted to close it off, he could close it off.
There are quasi-public parking spaces, all of those, in the Sunstrom Mall, at the post office, at Coldwell Banker, behind the hotel.
Well, I
There
meant
were-
particularly this gravel dirt area right behind the pizza parlor.
It's all
I don't
paved.
see it.
It's all paved.
Okay. Right behind the pizza parlor?
Well, that's a little bit of a landscape area there of Roberts.
No, that's in front of the pizza parlor. I'm talking right behind it, next to the hotel
Anyway.
park paved lot.
I think we can do all this on an individual basis, don't you think?
Okay.
We
Yeah,
can go
let's
down and talk to Robert.
All right, both Roberts, I'd love to walk through that and
Yes.
get a better idea of what's going on there.
Okay.
Thanks. Oh, you know what? I wasn't sharing. I'm sorry. Let me just share that for a second here. This is the area I was talking about.
That's two areas you're looking at there, Tom.
Yeah, this is the Coldwell Banker. That's
part of
paved.
that's part of the Sunstrom Mall.
And then this one right here.
That's part of the hotel.
Okay. All right. Thanks. All right. And then I was going to share something else. What was it that I was? Oh, yeah, the points of the letter. Let me
Mhm.
put those back up.
We'd like to see how the rest of the council feels on the GCAP's recommendations here.
So, basically, instead of trying to pass a detailed motion tonight, I thought it'd be easier if the council just allow us to write a letter along these lines. Melissa has left, but she indicated pretty much the same preferences. She was strongly for 4A and all two, if leading to all two, or she would like all two, but feels like all 4A is the best way to go.
So how do the other council members that are still present feel about the Streetscape Committee putting together this letter?
I would make a motion to that effect, directing the Streetscape Committee to write a letter to Caltrans and MCOG from GMAC with the key points listed below.
Great. Is there a second?
Yeah, I'll second that.
Don seconds that. Okay, thank you, guys. Let's take a vote on that then. Kevin,
Aye.
Don,
Aye.
Tom,
Aye.
myself, Robert, I, and we have one person absent, which is Melissa, but we kind of heard what she feels along with the swear word, but that's okay. Tom, since you're such a good journalist, would you be all right with finishing off this letter?
I will. I'll draft the letter, run it by Robert.
Okay.
And I'm not sure Brown Act rules about this, but the council's giving us authority to write this for GMAC. You voted on it already. The public's heard about it. I don't think there'd be a problem sharing that and sending it out to council members at the same time. And we'll publish it publicly as well.
Will
If
you
that's
please
okay with everyone.
will you please send me those points and the information that you showed on screen?
I will, Mary. I'm going to send you a PDF of the entire presentation, and I'll send you a PDF of all the comments we received. You know, I had to cut something, so I couldn't read 42 comments tonight. 45 comments actually, and the 10 letters. So you will get a PDF of all the letters and all the comments on all points of view. And I will ask Don to please post all that material as well onto the GMAC website so that the public can see it. And I've already promised Caltrans, I promised the public that I'd send it to Caltrans and MCOG. I promised Caltrans they'll get it as soon as possible. I may send that off tomorrow and then follow up with the letter.
Thank you. The record and the archives appreciate it.
Excellent. Thank you, Mary.
Okay.
And now, what time is it, Robert?
It's getting there. We should probably wind down this GCAP committee.
Yeah, I think we're done. I was going to suggest we take a 3-minute break.
There are people that are waiting to hear.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, I'm going to take a couple of minutes break because I've been talking too much for the last few minutes and just need to stop for a minute. I'll be right back. I'll keep listening. I'll keep listening.
Anything to report on the Housing and Economic Development Committee?
I do not have anything tonight on that.
Okay, then take a break.
I did hear some progress on the whaler. I'm sorry, I always forget this. Whale Point Landing.
Yes.
I did hear some progress on that about the housing project that's planned there, or that's in the planning, I should say. But I would wait for the owner to come forward and speak to GMAC. I'll invite him to come to a future meeting. It's very interesting. It fits along with some comments I had earlier in the year about maybe creating some co-housing in town where people get an equity share instead of just paying rent. And he's got some very interesting concepts in mind about that.
Maybe we could save that for next month, huh?
Yeah, I'll see when he can come in.
Okay, then we'll go on without you for a couple minutes here.
Yeah, I'm listening. I'm gonna go mute and shut off my video.
Okay, Tom. Thank you very much. Anything new, Don, regarding 6D electric vehicle charging station along those lines?
Yeah, in fact, there is some new information that I'd like to share with the council and the community. Let me share screen so I can show you this program that we just became aware of.
Your network bandwidth is low, it says. There we go. That's nice. That's clear.
Yeah, if the network bandwidth is low, that's on your end, Robert.
Oh, okay. You were a little unclear to me. I'm sorry. Okay.
Okay. Just a few days ago, Janet Orth of MCOG, who a number know, of course, she notified me about this program that apparently she just recently learned about or made aware of. And that's this clean transportation program, rural electric vehicle charging. So it's a program provided by the California Energy Commission. I think it involves over $6 million. And it is strictly targeted to rural areas of California. So that would include, of course, Mendocino County, Humboldt County, other counties in the north, and also more southernly. But Sonoma County is not counted. I guess they're too urban. In any event, the purpose of this, and I'll read a couple of these bullet points here so those of you who don't see the screen will understand this program a bit. The purpose of the solicitation is to demonstrate replicable and scalable business and technology models that can deploy electric vehicle charging station to serve rural drivers. Support travel by rural EV drivers, especially those from low income or disadvantaged communities. Provide EV charging access in rural areas that are not served or inadequately served by charging stations. Provide support and maintenance services, ensure reliable and readily accessible chargers. And engage local rural communities, businesses to increase charger awareness and promote e-adoption. This is a pretty remarkable program, in fact, and it basically checks all the boxes for us. Our community. I think, as a disadvantaged or low income community that is not served at all by public EV charging, I mean, we check all these boxes. Now, there are a number of hurdles, and I'm not sure this is going to happen, to be honest with you. The hurdles are the minimum amount that they will provide for a project is $500,000. So this is for larger projects, not just, a charging station or two in a town like Gualala. There's no way we could spend $500,000 on this. So it would involve Gualala as well as other communities that are in the same position of not having any e-charging facilities at this point, and also communities that would make sense, strategic sense. And Janet pointed out not only us, but also Boonville and Covello, who apparently both of those communities don't have any public charging at this point. Now, the other really interesting thing about this program is that not only will it provide subsidies for the EV charging equipment in the installation, but also for distributed energy resources like solar panels and batteries. So a EV charging station can be set up that solar panels, batteries, such that it would rarely need electricity off the grid. It could be pretty much independent of the grid, probably still be grid connected, but it would be like a microgrid in the sense that it provides its own power to charge the vehicles. So you can't get any cleaner than that. It's totally 100% clean energy. That's what I think is really interesting about this program. If you recall the Cal EVIP program that was going on last summer, that we couldn't find any entity locally that would qualify for that or would be interested in it. That specifically would not cover any solar panels or batteries. They only covered the charging equipment. So this is at a different scale. I really like the fact that they will subsidize these other components of a clean energy solution for charging electric vehicles. Now, the other hurdle is timeline. The deadline for submission of applications is March 11th. So that's a little over, a month away. And Janet, unfortunately, learned about this a bit late, because apparently this program was announced December 14th. She just learned about it. She informed me and a bunch, some other people. So time is of the essence. And then the other hurdle, of course, major hurdle, is our county. Our county is short on resources. COG is short on resources to devote anybody to this project. We really would have to get a provider, like ChargePoint or EV-Rain or EVgo, some provider, major provider, which would take this project, excuse me, a cold. So I do cough every now and then. Talk sometimes makes me cough. So as I say, we would have to get some major player to really put this all together. I looked at and what's required. There are considerable forms that need to be filled out to apply for these grants. And it's non-trivial. If you probably haven't done grant this before, I think it'd be very difficult for you. We would need to partner with a business entity that has. So, I'm not totally optimistic about this, but it's an opportunity that I think we should explore and at least take a shot at. But again, we're going to be totally dependent on MCOG or the county,
Right.
because we can't do this here on our own.
Not at our level.
The other thing that we need, of course, we need sites. We don't even nail down site here in Gualala. I was hoping to meet with the community center next month, and I specified next month. This was a while ago, because I wanted to wait until, I think it's February 11th, the United States Department of Transportation is releasing their guidance on, the national plan that will be funded with $7.5 billion to expand the EV charging network on a nationwide basis. So I wanted some information about that before I even went before the community center or anybody else to discuss possible charging site. However, with this situation, we would need to know pretty soon, like within the next week or two, probably, if we have a site available here in Gualala. So that's, the latest news on the EV charging front. It's really unfortunate that we weren't aware of this when it first came out, December 14th. That would have given us a lot more time to try to figure something out. This is where we're at.
Okay, Don. Well, thanks for that semi-good news. Maybe something else like this will come along more often.
That really was good news. Thanks, Don. That's a good report. I'm looking forward to this. The one thing I worry about with the electronic cars is the charging. All the automakers are getting behind this. The government's behind it, and they're talking about building 50,000 stations, which really sounds like a drop in the bucket to me when you consider the number of gas stations in this country. Charging still takes longer than filling up your tank. And while they're making progress on that, you got to have the stations there to do it. We got to have them sooner they're in, the more people will buy electric cars. So thanks for your good work on that.
Okay, and thank you guys both for commenting on this. In the essence of time, I'd like to continue. We do have some applicants that are waiting to hear their project. So let's go on to the Telecommunications Committee. That's both you, Don, and Tom. Any stats you have to report to us?
Just our monthly view report was 122 views before the meeting tonight. That includes both the meeting itself and the report on Streetscape last month, which
Mhm.
accounted for 102 of those 122 views. And the most popular part of our meeting viewing was also that session.
Mhm.
I also just wanted to note, if I may, two things. During my break, I got a text from Melissa, who apologized for leaving. Thought it was in everybody's best interest that she did.
Okay.
And I filled her in on the action, and she's pleased with the action we took. And then the other thing is, during that break, I got another email, which I'll count as an email report tonight from a lady who lives here for 22 years. It said, also back 4A, and said that she's concerned about the future of Gualala because her children now are going to retire to Gualala, and she wants it to be a safe and scenic area. So I'll include that, since today's the deadline for those comments. I'll keep that one in there too.
Okay, Tom and Don, thanks for the committee report. Let's move on to the Water Ad Hoc Committee. Don and I did meet this past month for a short time, and we're in the midst of preparing some specific questions and information we'd like to receive from North Gualala Water Company. Hopefully it'll be educational and informative for us. Let me see, the only thing I wanted to also say, and then Don can also add something, but water flows in the North Fork Gualala River have dropped sharply since beginning of January, I guess. Despite the early seasonal rains, we have not received any noticeable precipitation for almost a month now. And you'll maybe have noted, if you go onto the North Gualala Water Company website, that mandatory water conservation measures are in effect. When water flows drop below 41 cubic feet per second between November 15th and February 29th, North Gualala Water Company must impose the mandatory conservation measures. So current water flows have dropped to 34.9 cubic feet per second as of the 31st of January. I checked it again today, and they're down already to 30.5 cubic feet per second. So we want to get a better handle on our water committee reports and updates to the community this year. And Don, you have anything else to add?
No, Robert, I think you pretty much summarized where we're at this point. Thank you.
Okay, so we'll have more for you next month, but we are working on, as I said, some interesting and important questions that we need to have answered. So we'll keep you apprised. Let's move on to item 7 on the agenda, and that's our permit applications. Again, thanks to the applicants and audience members that are sticking around for this part of the agenda. We'll go right into a coastal development permit that we have continued now for a couple of months. That's 2021-0032. That's the DeWolfe application to construct a 2,900 square foot 2-story single family residence and detached 567 square foot guest room over a 672 square foot garage. The location is 30100 South Highway 1. I see in attendance is Michael Baron-Wyke, the architect for the project. And I saw that Mrs. DeWolfe is also in, Vicky DeWolfe is also in attendance. So where do we continue here? Kevin, you sent us an email the other day and you said that story poles and the house layout had been strung. Is that correct? I mean, I did go over there and I saw that also, so it is correct. Okay. But
yeah, Robert, if I can just add,
sure.
I had the
You have the
pleasure-
mouse.
What's that? Oh, I had the pleasure of sending an email to Mrs. DeWolfe on January 18th, kind of in preparation for tonight's meeting. And the 3 items that I did mention to her were the story poles, the question regarding the recommendation to have two 2,500 gallon water tanks on the property. And the last one was, there any mitigation to comply with the housing size in relation to the lot coverage? And I echo your comment, Robert. I really appreciate seeing the story polls and also the flagging for the structure. It really helped me understand how it's going to sit on the property, the setback, and the impact to the ESHA. So I was very pleased with their efforts in completing that request.
So since we have Michael Baron Wyke in attendance, is there anything you as the applicant's representative can add to this application, Mike? Comments, input?
Can you hear me okay now?
Yeah.
Okay, hi. Well, you guys, sorry not to have attended this at the beginning, because I think it would have given you a lot of answers that were either in the application or could have been answered by myself. This particular parcel is 2.4 acres, and I recently completed two projects that are not in the Iversen area, but down by Roseman Creek, that were slightly smaller than this one on 2.4 and 2.6 acres that were also approved. I think that the thing that kind of threw a wrench into this is the fact that the county, in my opinion, and actually voiced by some of the planning department, labeled this parcel a highly scenic view corridor parcel, when in fact, living here locally over the last 52 years and designing homes for the last 45 years, it's clear that the highly scenic view category actually begins north of Iversen and goes all the way up, to Schooner Gulch and in some portion beyond around Moat Creek, possibly. But Julia Acker-Krob met me on the site, and she concurred that there was probably an oversight in stretching the boundary, the southern boundary of that highly scenic view corridor down onto highly wooded parcels, especially when homes had been built preceding that didn't really preserve the view at all. So that being said, she said, well, since we can't change the category, it might be nice, for you to therefore do a two-story building, because then you would reduce the spread of the building, but try and keep it in relationship to the lot coverage that you've done in the past that I've approved. So I did. I did a maximum lot coverage of 3%. The building is massed together and put in a portion of it as two-story. And it's not really a place where anyone looks directly at the ocean. They have to turn their head sideways and look through the trees, albeit, dying bullpine trees, to a high bluff that does not scale down to the ocean. It really is parallel, or slightly actually in some portions of the land, actually above the highway.
Mm-hmm.
So a van can probably see along the ground line out to the ocean, but it all became kind of a moot point. So I scaled this project to be slightly less than the ones that had just been approved in 2019 and 18 or 17. And so it was based on a neighborhood analysis, because it's a takings analysis. It's all Bishop Pine. And it's all dying, or most of it is, with a heavy cypress cluster along the north boundary. And so we had every indication of taking out the dead ones and replacing them, with the bull pine, kind of a 2-to-1 ratio as suggested by the planning department in the past. So here we are, the definition of neighborhood plan in keeping with the scale and size. The definition of neighborhood doesn't really exist. It's not written anywhere. It's just sort of by by individual decision of the staff planner. So I took it, basically to be ESHA western sided properties of 2.5 acres or more, or in that vicinity, with an extremely low lot percentage coverage. And that's what I kept to. I've had 100% approval on my Coastal Commission projects over the last 35 years. So this one sort of set me back. I went, well, wait, I kept in line with everything that I've done in the past. I've not pushed the envelope. I've just, complied along with what's being approved. And in the meantime, there's a house right across Iversen Cove or Bay that exceeds 6,000 or 7,000 square feet that can't be seen directly from the highway, but it certainly can be seen from the DeWolfe property. That is on 2.1 acres. And it was developed, in the timeline of since 92 of the required CDP permits that were issued. So what I think we've come to realize is that the politics and the mislabeling of the property are creating the problem here. And so Matt Goins has been working with us as a staff representative, and he's not here tonight. He was early. He was here earlier, but he got probably other things going with his family, and he's trying to come up with Julia Acker-Krogh the definition of the neighborhood. Where is it? North of it, there's nothing. It's just not nothing, but there's no development for a couple of miles of any significance. There is some around Moat Creek. And then south of it, there's more. And then there's a big break down by Walt Ratcliffe's, and then sparse houses scattered, all the way down to Havens Neck. So I gathered information from Havens Neck, from the Roseman Creek area that I've been doing, and then around, Island Cove. So here we are now, and Matt was going to present what he thought was an acceptable plan, and was going to answer all the specific questions that you guys had asked about water and about septic and so on. But all of those actually had been addressed in the application. I think we've got a modified mound system because of high sandstone on the bottom for the septic system. I think we have the tanks are buried because we were trying to, respect the idea of, if people do look through the property, why would they want to look at water barrels, which are completely visible and kind of awkward looking immediately north of this property that serve the point houses. The point houses never could find water, so they all joined together to get water from the east side of the highway, and then store all that water in those tanks that are under the trees, those cypress trees now. But to us, it seemed far more practical to bury the tanks. I buried the tanks on the project, one of the projects at Roseman Creek, because they make tanks now that are really cool. They're very low profile, and they don't have a deep draft like most standard water tanks. They kind of look like submarine pods. And so both the propane tank and both water tanks there are completely invisible. They're buried in the ground. So that seems to be kind of a small point here. But I think Matt's decision with Julia to define the neighborhood and what the neighborhood average would be is something that he wanted to present. So I'll refrain from stepping on his toes. But I think that's kind of where we are at this point. So it sounds like for you guys to know everything, it may have to get continued again to another meeting. But certainly, I'd say 90% of your concerns have been addressed.
Kevin, this does help us quite a bit. Mike, thank you for presenting that to us on behalf of the DeWolfes. One of the things about the storage tanks was that 2,500 gallons times 2 seemed like a lot of water storage, and that it was being put into the ground or underground was of concern because it's right there, or what we thought was all Isha on that parcel, and that it would disrupt the Isha even further by putting these underground water storage tanks in an area where there are still some live trees along the highway, and that would kind of screen the house from direct vision. I hear you about trying to screen the tanks themselves, but I was wondering, or I had mentioned last month, if there was a way to put those underground water storage tanks anywhere else, or do they also have to be 100 foot away from a septic system?
The storage tanks don't, Robert, but where I was going to put them is where the trees have died.
Okay.
So those trees you can see them on the site. They're right by that street side boundary. They're very large, but they're all dead.
Those two main big dead ones, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so that's where they would be put, and then of course new ones could be planted. I don't disagree with you there, and the intention was to put in new ones in that area that's already got the either the younger ones or the less diseased ones. As you know, there's an 80-year lifespan for Bishop Pine, and it's being shortened for a lot of these parcels because of the droughts and because of beetle infestation that's waterborne from Caltrans runoffs. So certainly I agree that they should be put in the least environmentally impacting area, but I was going to put them where there's already trees that have died.
Okay. And with the house footprint being strung out now, it's a lot easier to see where those potential tanks could go. As
Exactly.
I said at our last month's meeting, it was even difficult to find the old well and where that was even located. It was all covered up.
I agree. It was. I had trouble finding it myself.
Yeah. So and then it also brings up
Go ahead.
It also brings up the fact that when you look directly adjacent and to the south of the subject property, there's also an oceanfront home there that is fairly well screened, but I guess that's because it's got established vegetation between the highway and the house.
Exactly.
Maybe there could be some kind of a landscaping plan that could be integrated with the existing Ishas to screen it a little bit better from the highway. If indeed we're not paying attention anymore to the highly scenic area there. If that's not of significance anymore, I mean, I always remember seeing the rock formations out there when I looked across that parcel. Maybe all the trees have grown since that initial scenic designation was given for that area. I don't know that question, but it sounds like you've pursued a little bit more with both Matt and Julia. So that's helps us with our recommendations and our advisory opinions. Okay.
No, I understand. It's something that well, being here for so long, there's always been that cypress stand along the north boundary, and then and even along Highway 1 right there where the water barrels are. That's been there like forever. So yeah. I think the point houses were saved from more careful scrutiny, because certainly if the highly scenic view corridor pertains to the DeWolfes and it follows clearly north of Iversen, before Schooner Gulch, then if those cypress trees hadn't been there, all of those houses out on that point with all those little parcels, which I did a remodel for on the used to be the old Badger residence, right. All of those would have fallen under scrutiny to be 16 feet tall maximum, but they're not. If you drive out in that cul-de-sac, I think the one I remodeled takes over 25% of the lot. I think the other homes, if you look at them, there's no question about them being 2-story. And so just a little isolated rating for the DeWolfes sort of by itself, north and south, to be highly scenic seems, unfortunate, but it can't be changed. So I agree with you. I think screening would be to the benefit. I'd suggested coffee berry, wax myrtle, and bishop pine kind of mixed in so that it would, take up a good screening, because once the bishop pine gets to a certain height, you can look right underneath them. So I think that's still to be worked out by Matt and Julia. We'll comply with whatever seems to be, the most desirable, either to screen the whole thing or to do a screening, with a window. I don't know, but certainly a quick view by a tourist driving by. You don't want the driver looking in that direction. A passerby could enjoy it, but you're right, it's very filtered. It always has been, or at least recently has been filtered. So it's kind of a moot point to create a highly scenic, 1-point spot, when as soon as they get north of there, they've got a completely wide open vista of the ocean.
Yeah, and that's the idea perspective we're coming from, is if we all of a sudden seeing a big 2,900 square foot building that's 2 stories high, that kind of catches your attention too, and it shouldn't necessarily. It should blend in more, and so we were coming from the bulk perspective of this rather large footprint. We were also coming from that perspective, and confusing it with the highly scenic and all that, it all played a role in our carrying this on for a couple of months. There were some
I get it.
There were some other concerns we had, but I think they've kind of been resolved. I know you've had to work hard to get all your setbacks, especially from the creek on the north end.
Yes.
The septic system had to be 100 foot away from that. And
Yes.
it is a specially engineered system. It's not necessarily, it's called a standard system in my
That's correct.
my knowledge.
Yeah, Carl, a lot of times we did that on the fallow house by Roseman Creek too. A lot of times when they're digging down, they'll run into sandstone at a fairly shallow depth. So it means then that they need to go to what used to be called the Wisconsin mound system, but I think it's been hybridized since then. So yes, it'll be a system like that will aerate under pressure, to get the perk that it needs.
And as Carl Ritteman states in his paperwork for the system, it's going to have to more likely be on the county's monitoring system too.
Yeah, I think they monitor it every 5 years or something.
Yeah. So to continue, Mike, I'm glad you're here with us. One of the big questions we've had on other oceanfront projects of yours, and you've always done great jobs with presenting these to us as a council, but some of the runoff from the roof, where is all that water going to go?
Hold on, I just there.
Is it going to? There's a lot of water that's going to come off all that building, and you're very close to the bluff. Are you going to have any plan for sheeting that water somehow? How's that going to work?
There is no plan specific for sheeting. Normally, in this situation, we're back, I think, with the decks now about 35 feet. So the thing that could be applied, we've got 2 places where we can take the water that's not over the bluff. And that would be, the easiest one would probably be to the north. And then of course there's a creek or a runoff on the south. So on the ocean side, I think that's a good point, that the water on those roofs that are in that direction, which would be, I think, the roof over the master bedroom drains in that direction. And those, instead of sheeting, it could be directed towards those. Normally what I've done, like on Doss, if you remember, Robert, we actually did a French drain like a French drain.
Right.
That was designed by Lee Welty Associates, that we ran the rainwater into that, and then that just seeped, into the land back about 25 or 30 feet from the bluff edge.
Mhm.
And that one was the solution there. This one's not quite as critical because we're not as close, but certainly there could be that consideration. I'm not opposed to coming up with something there.
Yeah, it seems like it could maybe be directed to that southern drainage, huh?
Yeah, that would be the easiest one to do. So we wouldn't have to cross over the septic area and get the fall that we would need.
Okay. Kevin, you want to chime in a little? Do you have anything to add at the moment?
From my standpoint, I would really hate to delay the council's deliberation on this any longer. We've kind of been discussing this project for a while. I'm pleased with what Mrs. DeWolfe and Michael have done in trying to mitigate all of our council's concerns. And I would really like to see us take action and maybe approve the CDP and forward it to the Planning Commission.
I prepared some stuff here, Kevin, that I can read into the record if you'd like me to.
Okay.
I would recommend a conditional approval, as is on our cover sheet of these CDPs that are presented to us from the county. And some of the terms that I'd have in that conditional approval would be strict adherence to the recommendations of the updated geological investigation report by Brunsing Associates Incorporated, and that was dated May 13th, 2021. That has to do with the setbacks and the foundations and things like that. The WRA Environmental Consultants Report on the Isha survey dated August 2021, strict adherence to the recommendations of that report. And then I know they're going to be pursuing the encroachment permit through Caltrans. I'm assuming that the none of the healthy trees are going to be removed, especially on the bluff top. Vegetation should be left undisturbed at the bluff top. And then, what I mentioned earlier to Mike, which was the eventually approved home site should be further shielded from Highway 1 with plantings. And then regarding the water source, that gets permitted from the Mendocino County Health Department and is approved as a viable water source.
That has, Robert.
It has.
That has, yeah, that had a CDP permit before we came onto it, and Dick Seal, I believe, kind of spearheaded that. So there's a 5 gallon a minute well there now that had a CDP approval.
When I last spoke with the county, there was nothing on file, and that was during these first couple of months where we were reviewing this.
Oh, seriously? Because I thought I saw a copy of it back in 2019. Okay, I'll check on that. But
so that would
I'm pretty sure that was drilled. I'm pretty sure that was drilled with a permit. So I'll follow up on that.
It was way back in 2007. There was apparently 5 gallons a minute was determined on that property. So that would have to be, that would be one of our conditions, would have to be verified and approved by the Mendocino County Health Department and permitted as a viable water source.
Yeah, that's been verified by Alpha Labs. They did the testing on the water, but yes, we'll get you that information.
Okay, so that would be kind of my motion, Kevin. If there's anything else, yeah, it'd be nice if you, Michael, could continue to work with Matt and with Julia and your client, of course, to reduce the overall bulk of the home. The square footage maybe could be scaled back a little bit, but again, we'll leave that to you and your best recommendations. We both want to see this project go forward and no longer be delayed by us in reviewing it. And again, you played a big role in attending here tonight and giving us further explanation along with those story poles being erected and the footprint of the home being shown more definitively on the ground. So that'd be my motion, Kevin. I can, we can work on a letter with those conditional items, and I guess we can just get to a vote and go on with our agenda tonight.
Yeah, I'll be happy to second your motion.
Okay, do we have any more discussion on this item from anybody in the audience, any other council members? Go ahead, Tom.
I just wanted to note that Matt Goins was on he was the first one here tonight. And I warned him that we were going to do Streetscape before this. And I suggested to him actually that he might want to go away and read a book and leave his sound on and come back in an hour or so. I guess he didn't make it back, but he was with us through half the Streetscape discussion, I noticed. So, you know, last month we had long application discussions, and several people told me later they had to leave before the Streetscape discussion, but they wanted to participate in that. So I guess all things even out in the long run. But I think we can trust Mike's view on this, on what he's working on there.
Yeah,
Yeah, Matt and I spoke just before the meeting at 5 o'clock.
Great.
So with all the projects we've had come before us these last couple of months, with Streetscape coming to a head, we are in these 3-hour, 4-hour meetings sometimes every month, and it's just a sign of the times. There's many times where we have nothing on our agenda, so or from a CDP perspective. So bear with us, everybody. That's still out there.
This month, Robert and I together probably put in, geez, I don't know, 30 hours a week on Streetscape alone.
Don't tell Kevin that.
Yeah. So it's been a haul. But yeah, I think we're getting past the hump of a lot of the stuff. The DeWolfe project has been up here for what, 4 months, 5 months?
3 months.
Been, yeah, I think this is the third review.
Yeah.
Or
So we
maybe the
actually have
fourth.
a motion and a second on the table. We've recommended our advisory conditional approval on the DeWolfe project, and we'll take a vote, okay? Kevin,
Aye.
Don,
Aye.
Tom,
Aye.
and Robert. Aye.
And Melissa's an absentee.
And
Yeah.
Melissa's an absent. So I'll work with Kevin. I'll draft up something and run it by you, Kevin, and we'll get a letter off to the county, okay?
Robert, will you please send me that motion, because I didn't catch some of the reports and to whom they go. So if
Yeah.
you could just email me that, I would appreciate it for the record.
I'll do that, Mary, okay?
Thank you, sir, very much. And the letter as well for their archives in their file.
Okay, and if Vicky DeWolfe was still on with us, thank you also for your patience, okay?
Absolutely.
So, we have to move on with our agenda, folks. It's 9 o'clock already, so let's go on to.
All right, thank you guys. Good night.
Okay, Michael.
Thank you, Michael.
Good night.
Good night.
Tom and I handled the next one. It's
No.
What's that, Tom?
I think you handled this one alone. I did not handle this one.
Okay, well, we were on the agenda here to handle it, and I'm going to keep it real brief, but this is a project. I'll describe it here. Coastal development permit to complete guardrail improvements along Highway 1 between Schooner Gulch and Gualala River. So the part that affects us, our jurisdictional area, is pretty much from Iversen Road and south, not all the way up to Schooner Gulch. But this is a complicated project, but it's having to do mostly with all the guardrails that are protecting us from going over the edge of the cliff and some of these sharp turns along Highway 1. Caltrans is proposing to replace existing metal beam guardrail posts and guardrails, and to end treatments with a new system which will meet current and federal standards for crash protection structures. So what they're looking at doing is the existing fiber vegetation control that they have in place under these metal beam guardrails will be replaced with minor concrete vegetation control, they call it, throughout the project limits that we have jurisdiction over. So a black or brown pigment will be added to the concrete to limit the visual impact of the facility and reduce the urbanizing effect and visual change to the new concrete. So what they had there before was some kind of a fiber. Let me refer to how it reads here. They were looking to replace the existing fiber vegetation control currently in place under the metal guardrail with minor concrete vegetation, and I already mentioned that, but yeah, it gives them ease of maintenance is what it boils down to. So it was a limited area along these guardrails that will be changing from the fabric to a concrete base at these metal guardrails. That in essence is what the project is about, okay? It doesn't go beyond the limitations of the actual guardrail from what I can see, but I mean, I didn't totally study every aspect of this, but that's in my summary what the project is about. Anybody else have any input on it, or do you see any problem with it?
Do you have any comment on it, Robert? Do you think it's a good idea, bad idea?
Well, from Caltrans perspective, it's probably a good idea for their maintenance of those areas. Apparently they have a lot of labor intensive issues to keep the vegetation down at those metal guardrails. I haven't noticed it over all the years, but just as long as it doesn't allow invasive species to enter, hopefully the concrete base and the fact that they're you know, staining this in such a way so it's not a visual thing, I'm okay with it.
Okay, you know, I'm a little bit reluctant. Anytime I hear concrete replacing vegetation, my ears perk up.
Mhm.
And, you know, I don't really see why, except from seeing the guardrail, I don't understand the safety impact of it. It doesn't sound like it really enhances safety at all. It just makes it easier for Caltrans to maintain a highway through an area where there's a lot of growth.
Yeah, it's not really a
which-
safety. It's not really a safety thing that they're doing this for. It's for vegetation control upgrade is what they're calling it.
Vegetation control upgrade.
Upgrade.
It sounds like a vegetation elimination upgrade.
Which is probably why they had to do this CDP to begin with.
Robert,
Yeah.
I thought in certain cases, they're actually going to replace the guardrails to bring them up to a higher safety standard.
That I did not notice.
Yeah, I think that may be part of the project as well. But, you know, in terms of the concrete replacing this other material, they have some kind of material down there, just that plants and dirt can collect and then start to grow. And then what do? They come by with Roundup and spray it or something.
Yeah.
You know, so yeah, there is labor involved in maintaining the existing guardrails the way they are in terms of what can grow underneath them. So, you know, paving that over with concrete definitely is going to reduce maintenance. The question I have is, well, concrete, you know, has a pretty high carbon content. So, you know, what mitigation is there, if any, unless they think maybe the mitigation is the fact that there'll be less maintenance, fewer vehicles, driving up and down Highway 1, maintaining this, that reduces carbon, of course. So I don't know, maybe that's what they're thinking of in terms of mitigating the carbon footprint of a project like this.
We were supposed to give a comment or our response on this by January 6th, so it's already somewhat belated that we're doing this. We can always table this for tonight and come back to it next month because we don't look like we have anything happening by next month, and review it a little further and more in depth. I just didn't have the time to go into it any further than I just did.
You know, I'm kind of wondering what review can we really do? It's a fairly technical
Yeah.
document, the CDP, and I mean, they go into a lot of detail about how they're going to do this. And it's largely, well, it's all along Highway 1, mostly in our area, but maybe some of it's outside of our area. So I'm wondering what realistic input we can have on this kind of a project, Caltrans.
Look at the impact we're having on the streetscape.
Well, that I think is a little different. You know, this is like a maintenance operation on an existing road. Things going to get built up. You know, it's just replacing what's currently underneath these guardrails, or maybe also improving some of the guardrails to bring them up to current safety standards.
Yeah, they say it's a more effective vegetation control than the fiber mats, which allow for sediment to build up and in turn let vegetation grow on top of those mats.
Yeah, and look what tends to grow alongside roads. Invasive species. They love it there.
Right. And
so it's not like, you know, this is gonna somehow undermine and destroy habitat for native plants.
Right.
I don't think it's gonna
not
do
at
that.
The guardrails, right? Not at the guardrails.
No.
The other thing that caught my eye, Don, and other council members, is that the concrete weed mat also helps to reduce some fire hazard by reducing the fuel on the roadside by these guardrails. So that's a benefit. I mean, overall, I think we could probably not come back to this next month.
I don't think we need to.
Okay.
Is anybody's who's the planner on this?
Let me look here. Hang on. Juliana Cherry.
Juliana. No, but you didn't talk to Juliana, did you?
I didn't have a chance to, Tom. No.
Yeah, I'm just looking on the references from the county, and I don't even see this on here anymore. I don't know if I've never seen them take something off.
You mean the CDP?
The CDP.
I just downloaded it. It's there.
Did you?
Yeah.
Do you know what month it's under?
January.
It's January. Yeah, it's current.
It's not on the website.
Not on.
Oh, here it is. Here it is. Caltrans.
Yeah.
2021. I'm wondering if it might be worth it having a conversation with Juliana about this and see what her take is. But
let's do that, and let's table it for tonight.
Okay.
Okay, and then we can.
Let's table it. And Robert, if you need help with it, you know, I'm going to have a limited time this month, but
I understand.
Yeah, I'll try to give Juliana a call and see if there's any answers to the questions I'm asking. And Mary has a question.
Go ahead, Mary.
I just have a comment. California poppy grows like crazy along the roadside. Absolutely, just you see it everywhere.
Right.
You were saying that only invasive species were coming in. California poppy is prolific along the roadside.
True, Mary, but it depends.
Not underneath the guardrails. I've never seen.
Oh yeah, I've seen them underneath the guardrails.
Mostly Scotch broom.
All along Highway 1.
Because
they're all under everything.
They're pretty resilient, California poppies, but what usually happens is where mankind disturbs the environment, like around guardrails, or wherever we disturb it, that's where invasive species tend to come in, is what I've found. So, but anyway, we'll table this until next month to get a little bit more information together on this, okay?
I'm writing to Juliana right now, and I'll copy you, Robert.
Okay, go ahead, Don.
Whatever ends up growing under these guardrails, whether it be native plants or California poppy, gets chopped down, or
right.
They put herbicide on it. So it's not a place where native plants could ever thrive,
or where we have to be overly concerned about it. Yeah, at
exactly
these occasions. Okay, we'll debate on this, whether we're gonna put it on next month or not still, but we do have some questions, so it wouldn't hurt us to table it, okay? Let's move on. We are up to item 7C, and that is Coastal Development Permit 2021-0052, all one. That is a permit application for a 1,300 square foot home, 165 square foot deck, a 493 square foot accessory building, a 1,200 gallon pump chamber, 1,200 gallon septic tank, North Gualala Water Company connection, I guess, 200 square foot driveway, possible standby electric service and or propane tank and vegetation removal. This is located at 34620 South Highway 1. And I believe it was Kevin and Don who walked this.
Well, thank you, Robert. You gave my whole report.
Okay.
No, and is it Dunye?
Dunya.
Yeah. She was kind enough. I sent her a communication in January with some specific questions I had, and I copied Don on it. And first and foremost, I asked her if they happen to put any stakes to define the property and the outbuildings. And she responded right away that the potential building sites have been staked, which I was very pleased to hear. But in that, she said it was recently discovered that the 493 square foot building site overlaps some of the septic design. So she's working with Andy from Carl Rittman to come out in April to tweak and restake the septic design. She provided some answers to some other questions that I had as well, but the essence for this application tonight is that they're requesting that we put it on hold until April, when they're able to redesign the 493 square foot building so it doesn't impact the septic design. Is that correct, Ms. Hallman?
Well, my hope is to shift the septic so that the smaller building can remain where we put it. And Andy thinks that we should be able to tweak that pretty easily, given the slope on the site. So.
Okay. So my recommendation, Robert, and I copied Don on this as well, so he and I have been up to speed on the project, is let the architect, let them redesign the area with the septic tank and then just come back to us in April. And then Don and I can walk the site with the staked area and kind of get a better idea of their project.
Okay, sounds fair. Thanks for sticking with us here on this whole meeting tonight.
Sure. It's my first time doing this, so I'm pleased to do so. I wanted to just, shall I let you guys know when the septic has been staked and maybe we could all walk it together?
Absolutely, that would be great.
Great.
And you have my email, so just go ahead and send me your email confirmation, and then I'll contact Don and we'll meet you out there and walk the site.
Sounds good. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, well,
so that was a short report.
Thank you, Kevin, for that great report. We have one more coastal development permit application to handle here, and that would be 2020-0023. That is the CBO Chang and Curtis parcel or project. And that was handled by Tom and Kevin.
Yeah, and mostly by Kevin. Kevin's an all-star tonight.
Okay.
So thank you, Tom. No,
thank
Tom
you.
And
Is Lori still in attendance?
And Lori is still in attendance.
Okay.
Thank you, Lori.
We were really pleased that the impact really was regarding the Bishop Pines. And the recommendation was in the report was basically for them to be careful of the Bishop Pines, do not, damage them during construction. Tom and I walked the site and we didn't feel that currently where the Bishop Pines were, that there would be any impact at all during their construction. So we don't feel there should be any delay on approving the CDP because it almost looks like a non-issue.
Yeah, I think that's this could be the shortest CDP review ever. I think I agree with Kevin, and thank you, Kevin, for taking the lead on this. I just had no concerns, and when Kevin and I went there, we decided that in about 3 minutes and spent the rest of the time talking about another matter that's been on the agenda tonight. I think we were there for an hour.
Okay.
Hey, hi, this is Lori. Yeah, thank you very much for that comments, actually.
Okay.
Yeah, Lori, thank you for your patience too. We realize we've been kicking this back and forth for a while, and you've waited through a couple of long meetings, and we really appreciate that. We're usually a little bit more efficient than this.
No, I actually enjoy it, but I'm actually in Houston, so I'm trying to keeping myself awake. But it's a very, very impressive meeting. Actually, I really appreciate and I'm glad you guys handling things and taking care of Gualala.
Yeah,
really nice.
Thank you, and feel free to weigh in on any Gualala matter. We're always glad to hear from the public. And aren't you glad I didn't do a PowerPoint about your project?
Yeah, Lori, all the best. Lori, the best of luck with completing that project, okay?
I covered the whole thing by myself. I look, there's a lot of damage already for the water. I just feeling so hurt to see the whole thing being showered each winter. And I really want to get this done this year. At least put a roof on. Yeah.
So Robert, I would make a motion to approve CDP 2020-0023.
Okay.
Second.
Second by Tom, and we'll take a vote. Don?
Aye.
Kevin?
Aye.
Tom?
Aye.
And Robert? I'm an aye. Okay. Wow.
I'd like to thank Tom for his due diligence and working so hard with me on this review of the CDP.
Okay, good, you guys.
Thank you. I'm going to take off. Thank you, Robert.
Thank
Lori,
you.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Lori. Bye-bye.
For hanging in there with us, okay?
Thanks.
Okay, so had we known that, we could have handled this stuff in the very beginning.
Sometimes it just works out that way.
Agenda-wise, where are we? Mary? I guess we're down to Mary's? No.
The permit review is on there, if any. And I was wondering about the Cahill CDP 2021-0043. It was on last month's agenda. It was not on this month's agenda. Even in the permit review, I have received nothing regarding them or let's see, there were two others. And Zaggi, Jaggi, maybe it's Yagi. At any rate, I have received nothing regarding those two, and they were on the website.
Okay, but if
they are on the website, let me just check this, Mary. I think if I remember, you were correct on this. We put it on there because it was on the website, but it was not referred to GMAC, which is what your suspicion was. So,
and it is in Gualala.
We were not asked to review it.
Well, I'm wondering why. If it's in Gualala and GMAC reviews all CDPs in Gualala, I'm wondering why you were not sent this.
You'd have to ask Mr. Grunendijk about that. He's the planner on the case. We didn't look into it because we were just so busy and we had so many things. We decided not to continue with this one.
I recall Cahill had something to do with a septic repair, if I'm not mistaken.
It's a septic replacement in an existing 4-bedroom single-family residence.
So you feel it needs to be reviewed then?
We weren't asked to review it, and we didn't really have room to review it.
Well,
So we
septic-
didn't review it.
Septic system repairs aren't necessarily usually something that we review. I know of many septic repairs that have happened over the years, and we've never had to review those before. So if that's indeed what Cahill was, I'm not feeling so remorseful about that one. But Jaggy, I don't know what that one was, Mary.
Let me pull the record on it. It's the CDP to.
Was that
it's a
last month,
boundary
Mary?
line adjustment. It's not a CDP, it's a B, boundary line adjustment.
On
Oh,
Jaggy.
Figure the boundaries between two lots in Anchor Bay, lot number blah, 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 will decrease by 0.24 plus or minus acres, and lot 2 APN will decrease by, will be decreased by 0.33 acres.
Wait, they can't both be decreased.
Well, if it's a boundary line adjustment, we
One
usually
is going
hear.
to be decreased and the other one will be decreased. That's what it says. I'm only reading it. So one of them will have to be decreased and one of them will have to add that it says decrease on both.
Let me talk to the planner of that one, okay, and see if we need to review that.
Yeah, that's
Oh, here it is.
JAGGI.
Let me take
You
a
got it,
quick look
Tom?
at it. Yeah, I got it.
Who's
Let
the
me take
planner
a
on
quick
that?
look.
The
That would be
planner
Dirk
is
Larson.
Dirk Larson.
Dick Seal is the agent on that. And let me check the agencies for referral. Local. Once again, we are not on the oh, yes, we are. We are asked to review that one.
And there's a response.
But I have yet to receive it from them in the mail. I went on and printed it, but it has yet to be received by me.
This one was dated December 1st.
That's correct.
And the due date was December 15th.
Yes.
Let me call the planner and I'll check on the status on that one, okay?
Okay, again, that's Dirk Larson. I think he's one of the newer agents.
I'll do that, Tom.
Yeah, it hasn't arrived and I was just wondering what was going on, that's all.
Could have gotten lost in the mail.
Yeah, and Cahill was spoken of on the agenda last month, but wasn't there this month and I didn't know what was going on.
That's what went on. I checked your questioning. You questioned whether or not it was why you would not get it, and I looked again, and it was not assigned to Gualala MAC.
Okay.
Are you still on that?
And I'm looking at the lot adjustment. Yeah, I see what it is. It does look like one of the parcels has to divide. They're creating a triangle in here in the two parallel lots. I'm looking quickly for the reason. Request will decrease. Yeah, one of them decreases, one of them increases.
Right. It says decrease on both sides though. I'm afraid. I'm sorry.
Yeah, well, it would make sense to looking at the diagram. I'm looking for the reason. Usually they have a reason of why they're doing it.
Now, it didn't say on the CDP or on the boundary permit itself, right at the front page. Didn't
Yeah,
say
usually it's
like-
right in the front and it doesn't say that there.
Like when we did the Ron Horn one, yeah.
Yeah, the Ron Horn one was a more logical one and it was really clear why they were doing it.
Yeah.
This is on Ocean View Way,
Yeah.
46851.
Honestly, it could be just, one neighbor selling the other one a little piece, a sliver of his land. It's probably what it is. And it's probably a real simple one.
Like I said, I'll check with the planner, okay?
Okay, sounds good.
So are you still on that page, Tom, of the county
Yes.
website?
Yes.
I reviewed the one for February. I just looked at it, what it's all about. And it's a coastal development permit renewal, 2022-0001. Mary, we had edited or we amended the agenda tonight to include that, okay?
Oh,
I
very
think,
well. I missed the first
right.
11, 12 minutes, so I'll watch the recording and make sure that I get all of that information. I also don't know what time the meeting started.
It was about 6:04.
6:04. Thank you very much.
As far as that CDPR, the renewal goes, I think we should handle it. Just a little bit that I read about it when I was reviewing it. There's some changes to this. This was a long ongoing coastal development permit application. I know the parcel because it's also for sale. It happens to be right across from the DeWolfe property on the other side of the highway. It's a very limiting parcel. It's also it's 2.7 acres and it's quite limiting. It has the same two creeks that go on either side of it down to the ocean, like on DeWolfe, and yet they can only fit a tiny home on it. So I think we should review it. It's kind of
there's yet another application, 2021-0006. It's in the February file. It's another Caltrans one. It's, you know, I'm reading the description here. It's digging a ditch on the side of the road and putting in a drain under the road. I can't think of a simpler project, and we are on the review list for this one.
Okay.
The planner is Sam Vandewater, and the review is due by February 18, which we won't make.
I will go on the website tomorrow and print the first and fourth pages. The fourth page is usually the contact information to whom I send letters announcing that we have received whatever. But if you could ask the planners when you ring them tomorrow to please send them to the Gualala MAC so that we'll have them officially, because I have nothing on Yagi or Cahill officially. Of course, we're not on Cahill, but
this one's listed on the site as it's Mendocino County of Transportation, not the state. It's not Caltrans, but it's a private parcel, and I don't really know why. I guess Mendocino County owns the land, so that's why they're asking permission to do this. They're digging a culvert, you know. It's not a big deal. But I think these new planners that have come in, you know, may be doing this unequally. So it may just be a question of them settling in.
Right. Well, maybe Julia needs to say, hey, anything in Gualala goes to the GMAC. Send it.
Robert, do you want to reach out to Julia and just kind of go over this and say, hey, look, there's a couple that were referred and a couple that weren't, and we're not sure that all your new planners are following the same rules.
Right, and they should know, and being new planners, they probably don't.
Right.
Okay.
And Julia's been crazy busy, so this is not something she needs, but she does want consistency. She's really great normally, and she probably not like that there's some unevenness there.
Yes.
That we're taking her Thursday night to discuss it. So please, Robert, if you could give her a call, that'd be great. And Mary, for your sake, I'm going to make sure I get the video done tomorrow. So you'll be able to write your minutes.
Get it done tomorrow. I can start in on the minutes on Monday or Tuesday. Don't rush it.
Well, I've got some plans for the weekend, so I'm going to make sure it gets done tomorrow. And I'm going to try to start I have to send those comments off to Caltrans. And then I'll start working on the letter next week.
Okay, then I can start the minutes on Saturday then. That'll be fun, Saturday or Sunday.
Yeah, there goes your weekend.
No, I come home from church on Sunday and start in on typing stuff. And on Saturday, probably after pay and take, I'll also start in typing. So there's no big deal there.
You are a party girl. What can I say?
I'm definitely a party girl. My dog and I come in and she lies down and snores, and I just sit there and type.
Good dog.
All right. So we got
Mary, excuse me, Mary, while we're on the topic of typing up minutes and stuff, I think I need the final approved minutes for the past several months so I can post them on the website. You know, I always get, of course, along with everybody else, are the preliminary minutes that we have to vote on and approve, but I don't post that. I will only post the final version that's been approved by the council.
Yes, of course. And I thought I had gotten them to you, and I apologize. From where do you wish me to start? Clear up to
I'll
January.
double check tomorrow and send you the recent months that I need.
Thank you, and I will send them to you directly. And I
Okay.
apologize for keeping you dangling.
No, it's not a big deal, but I just wanted to mention that, Mary. So thank you.
Of course, I'd be happy to get it to you, and I apologize.
Okay, we've got our permit review assignments, or do we? Are we assigning anything?
There are no permits that have come in over this month. I was just wondering about Cahill because it was on last month's agenda.
Okay.
And then you gentlemen mentioned several others that were
I
on
only-
the website that I haven't seen.
We'll do some follow-up on some of those other ones, but there was the renewal one that it would be good if some of us walked it. I'll be happy to walk it. Anybody else?
Well, you have to receive it first.
Okay, let's wait. Let's wait on that one then. Okay, Mary, you're
I
right.
will let you know the day it comes in. I always try and let you guys know the day it comes in. I run a
Let me-
copy of it. I send it to you
Okay.
via email, and I always give the address for the website.
I'll talk to Julia Acker on that and on the getting that from the planners. And well, let's move on then with the agenda. We have your report, Mary, to listen to.
Very well. I worked 26.7 hours, which was more than I did in December because I still had the closure of the last year and the opening of this year. So I worked 26.7 hours in January. Materials were $7.34 for a total of $474.64. A new filing cabinet, I'm hoping will be donated to us. We do need a new one. I'm up to my teeth in paper and I don't quite know exactly where to put some of it. And I do believe this is going to be donated, and we're going to have 3 huge drawers to put archives in. So that'll be great. I'm looking forward to putting that in my office.
Okay, good.
And the lady said, "Oh, I'll donate it." I said, "Well, you know, we bought the last one." She says, "No, I'll donate it." So that's great.
Great, yeah. Okay, Tom, you have a report? You were anything else at this point?
I don't think I dare say anything more, except that I started last meeting pretty optimistic, ended up not so optimistic, but after hearing from the community this month, and particularly hearing from some people we haven't always agreed with, I'm hoping that we can find some new unity in Gualala, and that Caltrans will listen and steer away from this course. During our meeting with Caltrans, Robert said something I thought was very wise, that after many years of progress, it seemed like we took a big step backward in 2019, and then it came together in 4A, and then it looked like we took another step backwards with this talk about 4C. That's the way I felt in April of last year, and it's the way I felt when they went through these details last month. So hopefully we can get this thing back on track. I'm confident that our new project manager he said he's very eager to do this. He asked us to trust him. I'm having a little trouble trusting anybody at Caltrans right now, but we'll keep an eye on it and try to keep this on track and pull the community together and get this thing done.
Yeah. And as you mentioned during our streetscape presentation, the two very important personalities out there that did give us a lot of feedback, Robert Bowen from the Upper Crust Pizzeria and David Bauer. I think that was helpful to have all their input, and that maybe Tom and I, as the Streetscape Committee, we may go reach out to them a little bit further if we have time in the next month.
Maybe we can have pizza for lunch.
Maybe we should do that, huh? Okay.
Okay, guys, it's getting late.
Let's hear it from you. You adjourn the meeting because there's no Melissa.
Okay, I move to adjourn the meeting.
Okay, well, who wants to second it? I'll second it. Ready? Vote. Don,
Aye.
Kevin,
Aye.
Tom.
Well, let me think about this. Yeah,
This is too fun. Okay. Aye. Thanks, you guys. Thank you so
Thank you.
much.
Party girl votes yes.
Only 3.5 hours, not
Thank
too
you,
bad.
Mary.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Take care.
We'll
Bye-bye.
see you in our wonderful community. Okay, bye.
Right.